Chapter 42-33. Ka! With a crisp sound, the bee needle easily pierced into the bamboo. However, at this moment, golden lightning appeared on the surface of the bamboo. This lightning not only dispelled the poison on the bee needle, but also firmly imprisoned the bee needle in an instant. Wang wang! The bee-like beast flapped its wings, and the ring-shaped yellow light around its body surged and fell on the bamboo. It tried its best to pull the bee needle out of the bamboo, but the lightning on the bamboo flickered and easily extinguished the yellow light. Hoo! The two antennae of the bee-like beast moved and attacked the body of the thunder-amplifying bamboo with all its might. Boom boom! At that moment, Xianxia moved. His golden silhouette abruptly flew out and grabbed the tentacle with its hands. Immediately after, Xianxia's silhouette rumbled as he flew towards the peak of the sky-connecting mountain. Seeing this, the thunder-amplifying bamboo suddenly retracted towards the ground. Woo-woo! The bee-like beast let out an inexplicable cry. Its body was stretched extremely long. Finally, when the bamboo fell several thousand zhang, the bee-like beast's antennae were stretched to the limit. Pa! With a light sound, a cluster of blood spurted out from the bee-like beast's abdomen. The bee needle was pulled out by the thunder-amplifying bamboo, and along with it, a large amount of blood-red organs and other things came out. The bee-like beast's body flew towards Xianxia's golden body as its antennae retracted. Poo-pee-you! There was no need for Xianxia to make a move. The withered tree not far from the thunder-amplifying bamboo suddenly stretched out its withered branches and easily pierced the bee-like beast's body. Looking at Xianxia again, he didn't let go of his hands. He was very clear in his heart that the most precious parts of the bee-like beast's body were these two antennae. Now that he had them in his hands, how could he let go? Xianxia opened his mouth, and with a pu sound, a sword light spurted out. It fell on the head of the bee-like beast and chopped off its head. The headless bee-like beast's body fell into the withered tree. The thunder-amplifying bamboo and other wood-type bee-like beast all stretched out their branches and tore the bee-like beast's body to pieces in a few breaths. Xianxia shook his hands, and layers of brilliance appeared on his antennae. That brilliance flowed through the antennae and into the bee-like beast's skull. When the skull's flesh fell, the two intact antennae appeared in Xianxia's hands. However, to Xianxia's surprise, these two antennae were connected inside the bee-like beast's body. In other words, the two antennae, they were actually one. Good. Xianxia couldn't help but laugh, and then he placed the tentacle into his space with a sweep of his mind before he said in his heart, "This thing can be refined into a spirit treasure, and it would surely possess the might of an immortal artifact when utilized." What are these things? The sky-devouring beast's trembling voice could be heard. His face was filled with terror as he watched the thunder-amplifying bamboo and the withered tree devour the bee-like beast's body. It didn't care, Xianxia. Xianxia smiled faintly and transmitted, "What you see is naturally what it is." But they... Sky-devouring was tongue-tied, as if it did not know what to say. Then, he was suddenly shocked and jumped out from the leaves of the sky-soaring vine, as if he was afraid of being swallowed by the sky-soaring vine. He cried out in shock. "Why didn't they kill you?" The thunder-amplifying bamboo and the withered tree had already stopped swallowing. They surrounded the sky-soaring vine and waved their branches and leaves, as if communicating with the sky-soaring vine. Xianxia already understood. Although he wasn't a wood-type mutant, his body had just merged with the wood origin. Moreover, he had just used wood-type magic. That rich life force had already made these mutants treat him as one of them. Moreover, he was standing on the sky-soaring vine, so they couldn't distinguish him. Xianxia naturally wouldn't explain. He smiled and replied, "Nothing else, this old man's moral quality is good." Moral quality? Xianxia clearly didn't understand what moral quality was, but he still replied, "I understand, Taoist's moral quality is too good." Yes, that's it. This old man's moral quality is too good. Xianxia was grinning from ear to ear. He stood on the sky-soaring vine with his hands behind his back and looked at the bloody battle in the distance. "Why are you here? Are you here for that divine artifact? It seems, with your strength, you can't get it at all. Why can't I come?" Xianxia stomped. "You can come, so can Black Jade Donkey, Golden Toad, Five Colors Stupid Chicken, Black and White Stinky Bastard, and Little White Stinky Cat. Why can't I come?" Insatiable greed. Xianxia smiled. This old man gave you a weapon. How long has it been, and you're already disdaining it? Can't I come to take a look? Xiao Hua was like a defeated rooster. His face carried a faint shame, but his neck was still very stiff. The sky-soaring peak and divine artifact are now crazily spreading in the primitive wasteland continent. If other mutant beasts can come, why can't I? Do whatever you want. Xiao Hua was a bit gloomy. He waved his hand and casually said a few words, still looking into the distance. At this moment, the fighting on the heavens connecting peak had come to an end. Less than a tenth of the exotic beasts were left standing in the air. Their scarlet blood spilled on the heavens connecting peak, covering its original purplish color. The bloodstains that flowed along the peak looked like tears of blood left behind by the peak, making it look rather miserable. What's more, the remains of some exotic beasts that had been smashed into pieces were hanging on the peak, swaying in the wind as if they were laughing at something. The air was filled with the smell of blood, which didn't disperse for a long time. However, where Xiao Hua stood, many wood-type mutant beasts and sky-soaring vines clustered together, as if they were united against a common enemy. No other mutant beast dared to provoke them. Xiao Hua sighed. Then his gaze fell on the primitive 5 little ones. At this moment, the 5 little ones could no longer form a battle formation. Their so-called halos had been broken, and the brilliance around them had long since dimmed. Even one of the profound sky-white tiger's wings was broken. As for the golden toad, the black and white tortoise, they were all covered in wounds of varying severity. Fortunately, they were still alive. The primitive 5 little ones were already stealing glances at the lightning platform above their heads, which had already begun to crack. Roar! On the other side of sky-soaring peak, where Xiao Hua's gaze couldn't reach, there was a mournful howl. A horned horse ruthlessly stabbed its horn into the body of a huge stone-horned beast. The stone-horned beast howled and fell from the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The lightning platform let out a rumbling sound and completely split open. The cracks once again turned into thunderbolts falling down. Go! Xiao Hua's heart stirred. He used his foot to step on the sky-soaring vine. The vine produced a whistling sound and carried Xiao Hua straight to the lightning platform's previous location. Seeing the sky-soaring vine move, the thunder-amplifying bamboo and the withered tree hurriedly chased after it. As for the sky-swallowing beast, it saw clusters of branches and leaves flash before its eyes. It finally couldn't bear it anymore and urged its body to follow the sky-soaring vine into the sky. After all, Xiao Hua wasn't close to the platform. When he was still dozens of li away from the platform, the primitive 5 little ones had already crossed the platform. Sure enough, there were no more restrictions there. The primitive strange beasts safely passed through. Strange. Xiao Hua had just flown past the platform with the sky-soaring vine when he suddenly felt relaxed. He couldn't help but release his divine sense. To his surprise, he discovered that his divine sense could already be used. Moreover, the previous restrictions on the sky-soaring peak seemed to have disappeared. Xiao Hua urged his body to move again and immediately teleported away. Since Xiao Hua discovered something strange, the other primitive strange beasts naturally also discovered it. One by one, the strange beasts urged their bodies. Some stepped into the void, some turned into flowing light, and some used strange escape techniques. They all rushed into the sky not much slower than Xiao Hua. After flying for the time it took to eat a meal, the sky above their heads became increasingly blue. The wisps of white clouds were already under their feet. However, there was still no end to the sky-soaring peak. Xiao Hua's divine sense also couldn't see any divine weapons. Taoist. At this moment, the sky-swallowing beast was somewhat surprised. It pointed at a place and shouted, "You! Quickly take a look. Is that a divine weapon?" Xiao Hua was shocked. He hurriedly raised his head to look. Sure enough, on one side of the sky-soaring peak, there was something that looked like an axe hanging there. Since his divine sense couldn't see it, but it could also be seen by the naked eye, Xiao Hua immediately came to a conclusion. He whispered, "Yes, that's a divine weapon." "Damn it, that's impossible." The sky-swallowing beast swallowed its saliva and shouted, "This isn't the peak of the sky-soaring peak. How can there be a divine weapon? Isn't this different from what was said in the crystal? Moreover, this weapon looks so shabby and doesn't have any aura. How can it be a divine weapon?" "That's true. It was rare for Xiaohua to agree with the sky-swallowing beast's point of view. After all the magic weapons he had seen before, as long as they were slightly powerful, they would have some aura. Since this so-called axe was called a divine weapon, it should be much more powerful than a magic weapon, right? Could it be a gimmick? Xiaohua suddenly had a kind of enlightenment. However, after pondering for a moment, he raised his hand and patted his forehead. The delusion breaker Dharma eye opened. Ouch! What surprised Xiaohua was that as soon as his delusion breaker Dharma eye opened, an unusually dazzling 9-colored light immediately appeared before his eyes. This colorful light was like a steel needle piercing into his Dharma eye. Xiaohua cried out in pain and hurriedly closed his Dharma eye. A kind of terror that he had never experienced before emerged from his Dharma eye. Taoist. The sky-swallowing beast didn't understand why Xiaohua was crying out in pain. Just as it was about to speak, "Divine weapon!" Xiaohua groaned in a low voice. The magic power in his body was activated, and the power of his domain was crazily activated. His figure teleported to the top of the sky-soaring peak. If Xiaohua could see the divine weapon on the sky-soaring peak, how could the other exotic beasts not know? Boom, boom, boom. Huge rumbling sounds rang out one after another on the sky-soaring peak. The group of exotic beasts all released their domains. The strength of these exotic beasts who passed the selection wasn't particularly different. Therefore, when their domains collided with each other, powerful fluctuations were produced. Qi waves, splendor, and multicolored lights completely covered half of the sky-soaring peak. That powerful power formed a barrier, blocking the advance of all the exotic beasts. Chapter 42-34. Crack, crack, crack. Xiaohua's figure retreated from the void helplessly. His divine sense swept across the sky that was blocked by the chaotic fluctuations. Immediately, tens of thousands of thunderbolts appeared around his body. These thunderbolts and lightning condensed into a shuttle shape and fell towards the sky above his head. Xiaohua then activated the thunder escape technique and crashed into the tens of thousands of airwaves. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The thunderbolts fell within the fluctuations, causing the entire space to shake. Unexpectedly, Xiaohua forcibly squeezed out a gap in the turbulent fluctuations. Seeing Xiaohua's figure fly out from the gap, roar! The seemingly most powerful black ape mutated beast went crazy. It raised both of its arms in the air, and a pitch-black beam of light appeared between its 10 fingers. The core of the beam of light was blood red. Crack! The black ape actually tore a 10-mile-long gap in the void where the beam of light went. Although the fluctuations and chaotic aura rushed out from the void, the black ape, whose eyes were already red, didn't even look at it. Its figure turned into a beam of black light and crashed into the gap. Roar, roar! In the distant sky, a strange bird with 4 wings on its back let out a high-pitched cry. This cry didn't sound like a bird's cry, but more like a beast's cry. Immediately, the strange bird's 4 wings suddenly flashed, and a phantom soared into the sky from the top of the strange bird's head. In just a moment, it actually rushed out of the blockade and directly rushed towards the axe high up in the sky. Seeing that a strange beast rushed out of the blockade, the other strange beasts didn't dare to stay any longer. Each of them used their incomprehensible divine abilities. They either rushed into the fluctuations with their physical bodies, or turned into flowing light. There was even a strange beast that looked like an anteater that opened its mouth and began to swallow the fluctuations. As it swallowed the fluctuations, the strange beast's body also produced fluctuations. It merged with the fluctuations and the airwaves and broke through the blockade easily. When the prehistoric strange beasts moved, the thunder-amplifying bamboo, the withered tree, and the other wood-type strange beasts also hurriedly stretched towards the sky. However, at this moment, these strange wood-type strange beasts revealed their shortcomings. Under the fluctuations, many of their branches and leaves were destroyed. Even though the surface of the thunder-amplifying bamboo produced layers of lightning to resist, many bamboo joints were still broken by the airwaves. The sky-devouring beast stayed between the branches and leaves of the sky-soaring vine, and also reached the place where the fluctuations were sealed. At this moment, it seemed to have given up the idea of fighting for the divine artifact. It was somewhat dumbfounded, looking at the prehistoric strange beasts and the strange beasts using their divine abilities. It felt really ashamed of its short-sightedness. However, it was under the cover of the sky-soaring vine's branches and leaves. Those fluctuations didn't affect the sky-devouring beast. Prehistoric strange beasts that could pass the selection slaughter, How could they be ordinary beasts? Xiao Hua, the black ape, and the others had only just broken out of the seal and gained the upper hand for the time being. The other beasts immediately used their other divine arts and broke out of the seal that was starting to calm down. They continued to chase after Xiao Hua and the others. Even the thunder-amplifying bamboo and the other wood-type strange beasts, after withstanding the attacks of the fluctuations, once again rushed into the sky. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over, knowing that he had the upper hand. He hurriedly released his Buddhist sense, wanting to quietly put that divine artifact into the space. However, the Buddhist sense was even worse than divine sense. When it swept past the location of the axe's shadow, not only did it not see the axe, but there was also an incomparably sharp fluctuation flashing in the void, unexpectedly cutting the Buddhist sense to pieces. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He hurriedly withdrew his Buddhist sense, no longer daring to use other divine sense methods. He could only obediently fly high, preparing to use the simplest method to get the axe. Under the thunderclap ninth heaven, the distance of several tens of thousands of li was covered in a flash. The Tongtian peak was so quiet that it made Xiao Hua feel intoxicated. Along the way, there were no more attacks or ambushes, as if everything was normal. Seeing that astral winds had already appeared in the vicinity, the blue sky had already disappeared, and the clouds had already disappeared. Layers of earth, fire, wind, and lightning faintly appeared in the grayish-white color above his head. Xiao Hua knew that the Tongtian peak was really connected to the heavens. This end was already inserted into the earth, fire, wind, and lightning. However, he did not have time to sigh with emotion at the almighty method of constructing the Tongtian peak. His gaze fell on a protruding mountain rock under the earth, fire, wind, and lightning. There was precisely an axe placed there. A real axe. This axe looked ordinary, but in Xiao Hua's eyes, it was incomparably stunning. The axe's entire body was grayish-black. The axe's handle and the axe's head were one. The axe's handle was strangely curved, and there were indescribable textures on it. Those textures in Xiao Hua's eyes seemed to be floating clouds, and he simply could not see the true appearance under the clouds. There was also another type of textures on the axe, and these textures were divided into two layers. Although the upper layer looked grayish-black, within the textures, there was a bright blue, faintly containing the meaning of light. The lower layer of textures was different, revealing a kind of pitch black, faintly containing the demonic qi and underworld qi. And in between the two layers of textures, there was only a straight thin line. This line, from the surface, looked like a straight line without any curve, but within it, there were tens of thousands of spiral-shaped fine lines that were like whirlpools. Within these fine lines, there was actually the aura that Xiao Hua was familiar with, the qi of heaven and earth, the power of the stars and moon, and other indescribable auras. What kind of axe is this? Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air, and a layer of goosebumps suddenly appeared all over his body. A kind of excitement that he had not felt for a long time appeared in his heart, and at this moment, his gaze once again fell on the edge of the axe. The edge of the axe was originally the most important part, but as far as Xiao Hua's eyes could see, he could not clearly see where this edge was. This was because all of the light, all of the void, and even everything had been sliced apart by this edge. If it weren't for the axe's hilt resting on the mountain rock would have already been sliced into nothingness by the edge of the axe. Fuck, who cares what kind of trap it is? Xiao Hua's eyes lit up, and he made up his mind. How can I let go of such a divine tool? This was human nature. Even though Xiao Hua was a grand ascension cultivator, his Tao heart was quite firm, and even though he had already seen through the trap, greed immediately welled up in his heart at the sight of this divine tool. He had already cast his previous plans to the back of his mind, and he was completely focused on obtaining this axe. With this thought in mind, Xiao Hua waved his hand, and his arm immediately transformed into a massive hand that was several hundred feet in size, which swept through the air toward the axe. At this moment, a cracking sound came from the void above Xiao Hua's head. Then, several thousand zhong of space collapsed. The black ape stepped out from the void, its body flashing with black-red bloodlight. This ape looked like Xiao Hua and stretched out its arm. It smiled coldly and waved its left arm. A string of cracks appeared in the void, and a force that could tear Xiao Hua's body apart pounced toward Xiao Hua. Humph! Xiao Hua sneered. He waved his other hand as well, and a huge fist met the black ape's attack head-on. Amidst the huge explosion, the space between Xianxia and the black ape exploded one after another. Xianxia borrowed the force of this attack to rush up once more. Roar! The black ape was enraged, and it let loose a wild roar as it opened its mouth to blast out a pitch-black pillar of light. This pillar of light suddenly shot through the air toward the mountain rock in the distance. The black ape's figure once again soared into the air, and it chased after Xianxia in no time at all. Roar! Xianxia had only flown a few more li when another beast roar came from the sky to his left. Xianxia turned to look and saw that it was actually the phantom of the four-winged bird. The phantom only existed for a few breaths of time before ripples appeared on it, and it transformed into the bird's body. However, the bird didn't attack Xianxia at all. It only looked at Xianxia with contempt. The 4 layers of wings flapped again, and another phantom soared into the sky and pounced towards the axe faster than lightning. Presumably, as long as the phantom was there, the bird's main body would also appear there. Oh no, this is bad. Xianxia was alarmed when he saw the ancient mutant beast chasing after him. He quickly scanned the area with his divine sense, and he cried out involuntarily, "This Xiao has already been overtaken by several ancient mutant beasts, and there are actually others who are faster than this Xiao in the other directions of the Tongtian Peak. I'm afraid this Xiao is going to fall behind." Thinking of this, Xianxia raised his hand and slapped the top of his head, shouting, "Fellow Taoists, quickly come and help." As he spoke, Confucian cultivator Xiaohua, bone-tempering Xiaohua, dragon bloodline Xiaohua, green-robed Xiaohua, Buddha Bodhi, and devil spirit Xiaohua all rushed out of Xiaohua's body. They didn't need Xiaohua to say anything, and they all teleported and pounced on the ancient mutant beasts in different directions, stopping them from advancing. As for Xiaohua himself, he let out a loud roar. The big hand that was originally grabbing the axe suddenly changed direction and fell toward the black ape. Xiaohua's big hand falling was really out of the black ape's expectations. Seeing the mountain boulder-like imprisonment coming at it, the black ape could only roar and wave its fists to meet it. Boom! The big hand fell and first crushed the pitch-black light pillar in the sky, and then it collided with the black ape's fists. When the big hand was destroyed, the black ape's body was also blocked, and it even fell several li. Roar! The black ape was furious and pounced toward Xiaohua. It seemed like it also wanted to kill Xiaohua first. Come on! The corners of Xiaohua's mouth curled up into a faint smile. At the same time as his figure horizontally pounced towards the black ape, a phoenix cry rang out. Xiaohua's phoenix form suddenly flew out from Xiaohua's body. With a flap of his wings, he directly pounced towards the axe in the distance like a bolt of lightning. Boom! Xiaohua's fists danced in the air as he fought against the black ape. Under Xiaohua's will, the space within a few hundred miles was set off layers upon layers of air waves. The inexplicable cracks appeared wantonly and blocked the prehistoric beasts that wanted to approach him. As for the four-winged bird that had previously transformed into a phantom and flew high up in the sky, it was now blocked in the air by Xiaohua's devil qi. It could only watch helplessly as Xiaohua, who had a phoenix body, flew past it. As for the ancient mutant beasts in the other directions of heaven-connecting peak, they were naturally blocked by Confucian cultivator Xiaohua for the time being. They couldn't get close to the axe. Seeing that phoenix body Xiaohua would be able to get the axe in a few more moments, Xiaohua displayed a divine ability to block the black ape's fury. At the same time, he was grinning from ear to ear as he thought to himself, "Your grandmother, you dare to snatch from me. If I'm not happy, I'll take out all the Fortune Gate's disciples and have them lay down a formation. Let's see who can withstand millions, no, tens of millions of humans." Chapter 42-35. However, the instant phoenix body Xiaohua approached the axe, a fist-sized lightning suddenly rolled out from the side of the mountain rock where the axe was located. Subsequently, a huge bamboo joint stretched out from the void and grabbed towards the axe. It was actually a moment earlier than phoenix body Xiaohua. Lightning amplification bamboo? What's going on? Xiaohua was slightly shocked. When did it get here? Isn't this guy still under this Zhao's body with the sky-piercing vine? However, at this time, there was already no meaning in thinking about the reason. Phoenix body Xiaohua waved his phoenix claw, and a shadow shot out like lightning, wanting to grab the axe before the lightning amplification bamboo. Ka-cha-cha! At the same time the lightning amplification bamboo's bamboo joint fell, another 100 bamboo joints grew out, blocking other directions. Phoenix body Xiaohua's phoenix claw was shattered by the lightning amplification bamboo. Damn it, if this Xiao returns to the hidden immortal continent and says this Xiao was defeated by a spirit wood, wouldn't people laugh their heads off? Xiaohua was really angry and anxious. He released several great clones, and the fatty meat was already at the side of his mouth, but it was actually snatched away by a spirit wood. He really had an impulse to be flustered and exasperated. Without any suspense, the lightning amplification bamboo's bamboo joint wrapped around the axe. However, at this time, a strange change occurred again. The bamboo joint that wrapped around the axe suddenly emitted a kacha-kacha, crisp sound, and the bamboo joint broke into several pieces. Even the rhythm of the shattering spread along the lightning amplification bamboo's bamboo joint, falling no less than several hundred feet. Ha! Seeing this, Xiaohua was shocked in his heart, and then he was overjoyed. If it wasn't for him using all his strength to resist the black ape mutant beast, he would have almost clapped his hands and laughed heartily. Ha ha ha, this Xiao understands. This axe is a divine weapon, annihilating everything in the world. My human race and mutant beasts all have flesh and blood, so they should be able to pick up this axe. And the wood-type mutant's body is a spirit wood, so how can it pick up this axe? No wonder the sky-piercing peak's previous restriction didn't stop wood-type mutants, because they simply don't have the qualifications to use this axe. Xiaohua already understood, but the lightning amplification bamboo didn't. The bamboo joint once again stretched out and was about to fall, but unfortunately, the result was the same. All the bamboo joints that approached the axe were shattered. There was no exception. Haha, this item is eyes. As Xiaohua laughed, he had already flown in front of the axe. His phoenix claws swiftly and fiercely descended, passing through the shattered bamboo to grab the axe. Xiaohua's suspended heart finally settled down. The several strange beasts closest to the axe were all blocked by his own clones. No one could stop the phoenix Xiaohua from taking the axe. Unfortunately, right at the instant Xiaohua came into contact with the axe, a ferocious aura arrived unexpectedly from extremely far away and assaulted Xiaohua. This aura seemed to have substance, and was more powerful than any of the attack methods that Xiaohua had seen before. Although Phoenix body Xiaohua had extended his phoenix claw, his origin perception had long since scanned the surroundings, and he was extremely vigilant in his heart. However, this aura was formless and traceless, and extremely strangely appeared near Phoenix body Xiaohua. Phoenix body Xiaohua was greatly shocked, so how could he still dare to take the axe? He hastily flapped his wings, and numerous illusory figures appeared. Those two phoenix claws even swiped through the air with a swoosh, forming a star moon shield, wanting to block this aura. Boom! With a loud bang, not only was the star moon shield smashed into pieces, even the illusory wings were destroyed. Even Phoenix body Xiaohua, who was on the verge of 9th grade origin energy, was sent tumbling in midair, and helplessly fell to the side of heaven-connecting peak. In midair, feathers and bloodstains slowly fell along with Phoenix body Xiaohua's unyieldingness. Shortly after, that aura rolled in midair, and once again crashed down with a loud bang. Boom boom boom. Amidst the violent tremors, all of the primeval strange beasts that were fighting were knocked down by this aura for more than several hundred li. When the primeval strange beasts appeared in midair, all of their bodies were trembling, and traces of blood appeared on the surface of their bodies. No matter if it was their two eyes or their single eye, their eyes all carried incomparable fear as they looked towards the origin of that aura. As for the thunder-amplifying bamboo, dead wood, and even the sky-soaring vine and other wood-attribute strange beasts, they were even more unbearable under this aura. Kacha-kacha, crisp sounds continuously rang out, and the majority of their bodies that were climbing up heaven-connecting peak were smashed to pieces, and they hastily retreated back into the ground. The primeval strange beasts were beaten into such a sorry state, and Xiaohua was similarly unable to bear it. The golden light that protected his body was annihilated by this aura, and the true essence within his body was beaten until it dissipated. Even the true qi within his middle dantian was beaten into chaos. An indescribable dizziness emerged from his Naiwen palace, and it didn't disperse for a long time. The phoenix body Xiaohua was the most seriously injured, and he had already fainted after falling from midair. Fortunately, he had the devil spirit Xiaohua by his side. The devil spirit Xiaohua vigilantly abandoned his four-winged bird and caught the phoenix body Xiaohua. Under the attack of that aura, he hastily fled to Xiaohua's side. Then, while the other primeval strange beasts were panicking, he escaped into Xiao Hua's body. As for the dragon-veined Xiao Hua and the others, because they were too far away from Xiao Hua, they didn't dare to act rashly at this time. They all blended into the group of primeval strange beasts, and quietly observed the situation. After that aura that injured the primeval strange beasts appeared for a moment, it immediately disappeared. Then, in the horizon, a pitch-black cloud and mist appeared. This cloud and mist instantly dyed the sky black, and swept towards the heaven-connecting peak. The aura that was exactly the same as the previous one was like a stormy sea, and it enveloped the space of several tens of thousands of li. Then, a cold voice that carried the vicissitudes of life, bloodthirst, and anger, rippled through the entire space like a god. Although this voice sounded very unfamiliar, when it landed in Xiao Hua's ears, Xiao Hua understood. Damned bunch of little things. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourselves in the mirror? You actually dare to come and snatch the Pangu axe. You all deserve to die for having such thoughts. Damn it. Xiao Hua hid beside the black ape strange beast, biting his lips, and did his best to resist the aura that could make 10,000 beasts kneel down. He thought to himself, there really is an ambush behind the heaven-connecting peak. This thing that wants to come, I'm afraid it has been spying on my existence all this time, right? However, although this aura is so terrifying, within it, there is a hint of familiarity. This trace of familiarity. What is it? The dark clouds were about to press down, and that terrifying aura became even denser. Even someone as strong as Xiao Hua couldn't help but fall down again. Within the rolling dark clouds, a strange beast that was several tens of thousands of zhong in size gradually revealed its figure. It's a bit strange. Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the dark clouds, and he couldn't help but frown. This was because the dark clouds were emitting a dense desolate aura, and there were also layers of dragon patterns. These dragon patterns were golden in color, and they condensed into the shape of a dragon within the dark clouds. However, the strange beast that was revealed was surrounded by demonic clouds, and the demonic clouds weren't completely in the shape of a dragon. Instead, it was a monster that looked like a dog yet wasn't a dog, a monster that looked like a dragon yet wasn't a dragon. As soon as this monster appeared, a boundless pressure fell down from the sky. As the demonic clouds around its body swelled, huge scales could be vaguely seen. The natural patterns on the scales, and the chaotic desolate aura, were constantly being born and destroyed within these patterns. Could it be that this is the dragon-shaped god? Xiao Hua suddenly understood. His naked eyes were almost unable to look directly at this monster, because the aura on this monster's body was much higher than that of a human. Under the gaze of a human, the monster's body had long been distorted. To Xiao Hua, rather than saying that the monster was standing in midair, it was better to say that the monster was in the void. However, just as Xiao Hua was puzzled, a few strands of Buddhist light appeared within the monster's demonic clouds, and when the demonic clouds rolled, they became even denser. What? This monster is actually related to Namo Maitreya Buddha? Xiao Hua was shocked. However, when he saw that the Buddhist light was instantly destroyed by the demonic clouds, and another voice, equally ancient but also filled with compassion and pity, was born from another direction of the heaven-connecting peak, he suddenly came to a realization. No, this is another existence. Sure enough, when that voice fell into Xiao Hua's ears, it was another voice. Heaven-swallowing beast, are you trying to lure this old man out? Xiao Hua hurriedly wanted to turn his head, but at this moment, another familiar aura, although faint, still had an indestructible momentum, pounced over from that direction. This aura fell into the previous aura. Boom, boom, boom. Loud explosions rang out, and the entire space within 1,000 li of it collapsed. Xiao Hua didn't even need to turn his head to know that the newcomer was the underground expert he had met when he was looking for Chaotian Tower. However, the expert at this time had revealed his ability, far surpassing his expectations. Xiao Hua and the group of strange beasts scattered in all directions like birds startled by the twang of a bow. They originally thought that they were the main characters of the heaven-connecting peak, but when the real main character appeared, they discovered that they were merely fish in the moat. Xiao Hua, who was fleeing in panic, finally turned his head, only to see that in the opposite direction of the heaven-swallowing beast, the horizon was reddish-yellow. Within the reddish-yellow clouds, there was a myriad of layers of Buddhist light. Within the clouds, wind-like ripples fluttered irregularly, and within the Buddhist light, there were heavenly dragons and fairies appearing and disappearing from time to time. Above these clouds that were shaped like Buddhist lotuses, there was also a strange beast that was several tens of thousands of zhang in size. This. Who exactly is this dragon-shaped god? When Xiao Hua saw this strange beast, although he had never seen it before, a trace of the same familiar feeling arose from the bottom of his heart, and he couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. This strange beast had a tiger head, a single horn, a dog's ears, a dragon's body, a lion's tail, and a chelan's feet. It looked rather strange, and its appearance was similar to that of a dragon yet not a dragon, a tiger yet not a tiger, a lion yet not a lion, a chelan yet not a chelan, and a dog yet not a dog. Moreover, under the Buddhist light, there was actually a layer of guardian heavenly king's projection outside of the beast's body. At this time, Dragon Vane Xiao Hua and the others had already taken advantage of the chaos to land around Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua hurriedly transmitted his voice to Buddha Bodhi. This strange beast looks like a dragon. Could it be that it is that dragon-shaped god? Namo Mithreya, Buddha Bodhi's figure fell into Xiao Hua's Naiwan palace, and he somewhat indifferently replied, Sandalwood, this thing is definitely related to my Buddhist sect. Its body has a dense Buddha nature of Namo Mithreya, and it also has the Buddha fruit of guardian heavenly king. Chapter 42-36. As soon as Bodhi's voice came out, the monster's strange eyes rolled and swept toward Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was shocked and retreated again. At this time the voice of the heaven-devouring beast sounded. Di Ting, you and I have to settle this. This Tongtian Peak is the best choice for you and me. Not bad, not bad. Di Ting raised its tiger head and praised. In this incomplete eldritch continent, only this Tongtian Peak is worth seeing. You've really put in a lot of effort for today's battle. As it spoke, Di Ting's gaze fell on the axe. Moreover, you actually took out Dragon God's Pangu axe. It seems like you and I are going to fight to the death today. Huh? The heaven-devouring beast was stunned and surprised. Unfortunately, before it could speak, Di Ting opened its mouth and spat out a Buddhist light that fell on Pangu axe. How could the heaven-devouring beast care to speak? He also opened his mouth, and the space within 1,000 miles in front of his head suddenly turned black and collapsed, as if it was being swallowed. Just as the black crater was about to block the Buddha's light, Di Ting's figure suddenly swayed and disappeared from the spot. Then, fist-sized Buddha lotuses appeared in the vicinity of the Heaven's Path Peak. Each Buddha lotus was burning with crimson comic fire. Let's go! Xiao Hua shouted. His mind swept over the sky-soaring vine, and with a wave of his sleeve, he caught Sky-devouring Beast, who was with the sky-soaring vine. His figure turned into a thunderbolt, and he fled into the distance with a group of strange beasts. At this time, Pangu Axe had turned into a flower in the mirror and the moon in the water. It had nothing to do with Xiao Hua anymore. The battle between the two eldritch beasts was not something these eldritch beasts could participate in. Xiao Hua and the rest were not fools. They knew that if they stayed here any longer, they would lose their lives. Damn it! The heaven-devouring beast cursed angrily. Its whole body was covered with black clouds and countless dragons pounced on the red lotus karmic fire. In a loud roar, Di Ting's figure flew out from one of the red lotus karmic fire and quickly used the horn on its head to hit the heaven-devouring beast's chest. Caught off guard, the heaven-devouring beast was flipped over by Di Ting. As the earth quaked and the mountains shook, the heaven-devouring beast's body crashed into a mountain range of nearly 1,000 miles, causing it to collapse. As Truth Listener pounced at the heaven-devouring beast, it said coldly, "Since I know that this Pangu axe is a trap, how can I fall for it so easily?" Woof woof. The heaven-swallowing beast let out a bark that sounded like a dog's bark. It leaped out from the collapsed ground and shouted, "If I want to kill you, why would I need to use a trap? Damn it, there's a problem." Xiao Hua fled while peeking. Hearing this, he looked at the sky collapsing and earth sinking battle in the distance and unconsciously came to a realization. However, this has nothing to do with this Xiao. Let this Xiao escape first before anything else. However, just as Xiao Hua felt that he was about to be safe, the space around him suddenly froze, as if a giant seal had been placed on him. Xiao Hua was shocked and hurriedly urged the magic power in his body. Lightning burst out from his body, wanting to break the seal. However, before his magic power could be generated, he saw a stream of light flash in front of his eyes. Layers of Buddhist lotuses bloomed and his figure flew out from the Buddhist lotuses, appearing at the Tongtian Peak that he had escaped from earlier. What's going on? Xiao Hua was shocked and hurriedly urged his magic power. Unfortunately, all of Xiao Hua's magic power was restricted at this time. He couldn't use a trace of magic power, and he couldn't use any strength. After this old man kills the heaven-devouring beast, I'll send you to the Western Paradise. Truth Listener's voice was like the sound of heaven. You actually dared to snatch the Maitreya Buddha's Buddhist light. You're even more despicable than the dragon god. Damn it! Xiao Hua was almost gnashing his teeth. He already understood that everything he had done in the primitive continent was seen by Truth Listener. This Truth Listener was probably related to Jianghu's previous life. He had touched Truth Listener's bottom line. How could Truth Listener let him go? Only when the heaven-devouring beast kills Truth Listener would he have a chance to escape, right? That's right. After this old man kills Truth Listener, I'll also kill this guy. At this time, the heaven-devouring beast's voice also sounded. On this continent, other than the dragon god, there can be no other dragon race. When Xiao Hua heard this, he couldn't help but feel his soul fly out of his body. He had calculated many times, but he didn't expect that the existence that was spying on him was right beside him. His crisis actually came from these two strange beasts with the ability to penetrate heaven and earth. Even if Xiao Hua didn't want to watch the two strange beasts fight, he had no choice but to watch. The two strange beasts, Truth Listener and the heaven-devouring beast, each used their magic power. The space within tens of thousands of miles was torn apart. On the entire land, all the mountains, forests, and everything else were destroyed by the two beasts. Those strange beasts that couldn't escape in time were also killed. There were no exceptions. Other than the sky not being pierced through, everything was not beyond Xiao Hua's expectations. Looking at such an earth-shattering battle, Xiao Hua only had one thought in his mind. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Hurry up and use your magic power. Let's fight to the death and perish together. Of course, Xiao Hua was also clear in his heart that these two strange beasts had survived and endured on this continent for so many years because they had a clear understanding of each other's strength. They knew that they didn't have the confidence to win, so they didn't make a move for so long. The possibility of them perishing together was very high. Moreover, while praying, Xiao Hua also looked elsewhere, waiting for the third person who hadn't appeared yet. Because from the short conversation between the two beasts, Xiao Hua had already faintly smelled the scent of a conspiracy. Previously, Xiao Hua might have had a trace of an idea to reveal to the two beasts, but now that he heard that the two beasts wanted to kill him, Xiao Hua naturally hid this idea deeply. Unfortunately, the development of the matter was not within Xiao Hua's control. The two beasts fought for more than 10 days. Seeing that the sky was turned upside down and the earth was turned upside down, there were no other peaks in the hundreds of thousands of li of land, but the two beasts still hadn't decided a victor. Although whether it was Di Ting or the heaven-swallowing beast, their bodies were stained with blood and large pieces of flesh were missing, the two beasts were still very far away from perishing together. The third person who was supposed to appear had also not appeared. Woof! The heaven-swallowing beast let out a slightly miserable roar, blowing away the spatial cracks that filled the sky and falling into Xiao Hua's ears. This sound is somewhat similar to Little Black. Xiao Hua, who was burning with anxiety, didn't notice it before. At this moment, he suddenly frowned. Thinking of the familiarity he felt when he saw the heaven-swallowing beast earlier, Xiao Hua's heart gave birth to an inconceivable thought. Damn it, this heaven-swallowing beast can't be related to Little Black, right? Thinking of Little Black, Xiao Hua's gaze naturally fell on Di Ting. There was almost no need to guess. Xiao Hua already understood that this Di Ting must be related to Little Yellow. Because as early as in the Xiaoyu continent, the 10,000 Demon Realm Empress had already said that Little Yellow might be Di Ting. Moreover, when he saw Di Ting, he also had an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Wasn't it Little Yellow's aura? Damn it, Little Yellow, Little Black, your father and mother are going to be killed by your... I don't know if it's your ancestors or descendants. You're going to become orphans. Xiao Hua had a feeling of defeat. Facing such a strange beast, he really didn't have any power to fight back, even if he used the heavenly white bone. Maybe only this Pangu axe. Xiao Hua turned his eyes to look at the Pangu axe. It's just... I don't know if this Pangu axe is real or fake. Why hasn't the third person who put the Pangu axe here come? Seeing that these two strange beasts didn't even look at the Pangu axe, This Pangu axe is probably a fake. Otherwise, while Xiao Hua was looking at the Pangu axe, the heaven-devouring beast was also looking at it. Its gigantic body suddenly emitted a monstrous demonic aura that covered thousands of miles. Amidst the demonic aura, dragon tattoos that resembled black flood dragons regrouped and pounced at Di Ting, who was covered in Buddhist light. Roar! As Di Ting roared, the space began to boil. The Buddhist light turned into strange branch-like Buddhist weapons that smashed towards the dragon patterns. Another wave of dazzling light that could tear apart the primitive world was born in every inch of the void, once again overturning and tearing the void. Even the seal around Xiao Hua's body was torn apart. However, when these dazzling lights landed on the heaven-connecting peak, the dark purple mountain rocks only sparkled, and there was no damage at all. Damn it! In this dazzling light, Di Ting suddenly roared. Its huge body turned into a stream of light and rushed towards the heaven-connecting peak. Xiao Hua was stunned and hurriedly turned his head to look. The heaven-swallowing beast had actually taken advantage of the attack just now to rush towards the Pangu axe. Seeing this, Di Ting suddenly came to a realization. This Pangu axe is actually real? Although Di Ting's body turned into a stream of light, the heaven-swallowing beast was half a step ahead. Its body was like the wind, and it had already rushed in front of the Pangu axe. Seeing that it couldn't stop the heaven-swallowing beast, Di Ting opened its mouth and hundreds of lightning bolts turned into the shape of Buddhist lotuses and attacked the heaven-swallowing beast's back. At the same time, Di Ting's body turned into a dragon, and its horn was like a meteor as it fiercely pounced on the heaven-swallowing beast. Seeing that the demonic clouds around the heaven-swallowing beast's body were flourishing, and a huge tentacle suddenly appeared and was about to grab the Pangu axe, Di Ting roared again and sped up. At the same time that Di Ting sped up, a spatial rift that was hundreds of feet wide suddenly appeared above Di Ting. Then, a strange beast that looked very similar to Xiao Hei poked its head out of the rift, and with a buzzing sound, bit Di Ting's dragon body. At this time, the lightning bolts that Di Ting sent towards the heaven-swallowing beast had already landed on the heaven-swallowing beast's back. Amidst a loud boom, the heaven-swallowing beast's body turned into a phantom. Within the phantom, the pitch-black demonic clouds were scattered by the lightning. Di Ting was shocked. He really didn't expect the heaven-swallowing beast to trick him again. At this time, it was too late to turn around. This was because although the head that poked out was small, the mouth that opened looked huge. Di Ting's huge dragon body actually fell into that extremely small mouth. Chapter 42-37. Roar! Helpless, Di Ting could only speed up in an attempt to escape from the mouth of the heaven-devouring beast. Woof! The heaven-devouring beast let out a clear cry as it bit down on half of Di Ting's dragon body. Di Ting's body glowed with Buddhist light and lightning as it tried its best to stop the heaven-devouring beast from devouring it. However, the heaven-devouring beast managed to bite down on half of its dragon body. Roar! Di Ting roared in pain as the Buddhist light around him diminished greatly. However, under his desperate struggle, his remaining body managed to escape from the heaven-devouring beast's devouring once again. Woof! The heaven-devouring beast let out a wild cry as the spatial rift rapidly expanded. Even the space within a few hundred miles began to ripple. The heaven-devouring beast's huge body emerged from the void once again as it pounced on Di Ting with its pitch-black demonic clouds. Damn it! Seeing this scene, Xiao Hua's heart turned cold. Di Ting is seriously injured. As long as the heaven-devouring beast continues its pursuit, Di Ting will definitely die. If Di Ting dies, I'm afraid I'll also die in the heaven-devouring beast's mouth. Why is my life so bitter? If Xiao Hua could think of this, how could Di Ting not think of it? Di Ting continued to fly forward as his entire body twitched. At the same time, the dim Buddhist light shone brightly as if he was about to make a final struggle. At this moment, Di Ting had already flown to the front of Tongtian Peak and was extremely close to Pangu's axe. Although Di Ting did not believe that Pangu's axe was real, he still lifted his qilin-like foot and landed on Pangu's axe. With Pangu's axe in hand, Di Ting suddenly turned around. The qilin foot transformed into an arm as it brandished Pangu's axe at the heaven-devouring beast that was chasing after it. Once Pangu's axe was swung, an incomparably ferocious aura immediately emanated from it. This aura enveloped the space within a few thousand miles. Under this aura, everything was imprisoned, whether it was spatial rifts or spatial fluctuations. Even the seemingly invincible heaven-devouring beast's speed suddenly decreased as the demonic clouds around it were blown away. How is this possible? This Panga's axe is real? When did you get the Pangu axe? The heaven-swallowing beast cried out in disbelief. You have the Pangu axe. Why have you always? Unfortunately, Di Ting did not listen to the heaven-devouring beast's words, nor would he answer its question. The Pangu axe slowly descended along with his arm, and the light and shadows within tens of thousands of miles were annihilated by the edge of the axe. The world turned dark. Xiaohua didn't even see what was happening. The entire world was filled with a kind of sharpness. The shackles around Xiaohua's body were instantly cleaved apart, and bloody wounds several inches deep appeared on his body. See. Xiaohua was shocked on the spot. Is this Panga's axe? This thing was 100 times stronger than the soaring dragon shears, and 1,000 times stronger than the soaring dragon shears. 10,000 times. Amidst his shock, Xiaohua didn't dare to escape casually. Ignoring the fact that he couldn't escape from Truth Listener, even if Truth Listener stood there motionlessly and casually brandished Panga's axe, Xiaohua wouldn't be able to escape even if he fled 5,000 kilometers away. While Xiaohua was shocked, the heaven-devouring beast was in big trouble. Although it tried its best to dodge, under the Pangu axe, even if its body turned into wind, it would still be cleaved into two. Almost silently, the heaven-devouring beast's entire body was cleaved into two halves except for its head. Woof! The heaven-devouring beast roared weakly. The half of its body that was still connected to its head was wrapped in pitch-black demonic clouds and rapidly shrunk, while the other half of its body instantly dried up and turned into powder, disappearing into the air. Humph! Success in one strike, Di Ting said coldly. I didn't expect you to actually dare to use the real Pangu axe as bait. Since that's the case, then I'll chop off this Tongtian peak where you worship the dragon god, so that those stone giants don't worship your bullshit dragon god. After saying that, Di Ting no longer paid attention to the heaven-devouring beast that was almost powerless to fight back. Its figure leaped up again, and Panga's axe waved again. However, this time, the Pangu axe was even slower. Looking at Di Ting's appearance, this Pangu axe was even heavier than before. Wait! At this moment, the heaven-devouring beast suddenly heard something strange and hurriedly shouted. However, it would have been better if it had not spoken. As soon as it spoke, the Buddhist light around Di Ting suddenly disappeared. Under Di Ting's forceful swing, Panga's axe actually roared. Woo-woo! Then, there was a soft sound, like a willow branch brushing against a mountain rock. However, after this soft sound, the entire Tongtian peak immediately emitted a purplish brilliance. Amidst the brilliance, Di Ting's figure fell backward uncontrollably. The Pangu axe in its hand drew an arc in midair, which went straight through the void and disappeared into the ground. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Di Ting's figure had not yet stabilized when it roared again. Then it perked up. A blood-red brilliance appeared on its horn, and its entire body pounced toward the Tongtian peak again. Di Ting's fierce voice sounded in the chaotic air. Even if I'm going to die, I must knock down this Tongtian peak. I will never let this bullshit dragon god accumulate the power of faith. Boom! Di Ting's figure was so fast. Before its voice fell, its horn had already hit the Tongtian peak. In fact, the Tongtian peak had already been cut off when Pangu's axe fell. It was just that Pangu's axe was too sharp, so the Tongtian peak did not collapse. Now that Di Ting's horn hit the Tongtian peak, there was a huge roar, and the sky changed color. The Tongtian peak that pierced through the earth, fire, wind, and thunder was knocked down just like that. Xiaohua stood in midair, dumbfounded as he watched Di Ting, whose horn was broken and who was on the verge of death, being blown away by the collapsing force of the Tongtian peak. Then, he looked at the huge mountain collapsing like a stone pillar. An inconceivable feeling involuntarily rose from the bottom of his heart. He roared in a low voice that was close to a whisper. Is this the magical ability of a prehistoric beast? Is this the ability to collapse mountains and split the earth by raising its hand? How is this possible in the cultivation world? Damn it! And you! While Xiaohua was in a daze, Di Ting's fierce voice sounded again. You fought with Maitreya Buddha Lord for the Buddha's light. You must die too. As it spoke, a suffocating aura once again fell from the sky, wanting to imprison Xianxia. Humph. Xianxia sneered. He hurriedly rubbed his hands, and a huge crystal light fell into the void. His figure hurriedly prepared to escape. Although Xianxia was not afraid of two dying beasts, he really did not need to fight with them. He only needed to wait for them to die slowly. Wait! At this moment, another aura blocked Di Ting's killing aura. The voice of the heaven-devouring beast sounded. Di Ting, let me ask you. This Tongtian Peak. Weren't you the one who ordered the stone giants to build it? Di Ting was stunned. Then he coldly snorted and replied, How could it be me? Why did I build this Tongtian Peak? Back then, weren't you the one who ordered hundreds of millions of stone giants to build this Tongtian Peak? Wasn't it for today's battle? Is it to pay respects to your dragon god? How is that possible? The heaven-devouring beast exclaimed, How could I order hundreds of millions of stone giants? I thought you built a Tongtian Peak similar to a Buddhist pagoda to gather the power of faith for Maitreya Buddha Lord. Which eye of yours thinks the Tongtian Peak looks like a Buddhist pagoda? Isn't it similar to the Dragon Clan's altar? Di Ting also felt that something was wrong and retorted. Back then, hundreds of millions of stone giants built the Tongtian Peak. It was divided into 9 stages. Isn't each stage a pagoda? The heaven-devouring beast seemed to recall. Back then, if I wasn't afraid of your Buddhist treasure, I would have torn down your Tongtian Peak. Bullshit. Di Ting also said angrily. Is building the Tongtian Peak into 9 stages a Buddhist pagoda? Isn't the Dragon Clan's altar built in the same way? If I wasn't afraid of your dragon artifact back then, I would have torn down this Tongtian Peak. Then. At this point, Di Ting and the heaven-devouring beast said in unison, Then, who built this Tongtian Peak? Seeing the two strange beasts entangled with each other again, Xianxia quietly ordered. The green-robed Xianxia steered his invisible nascent soul and secretly slipped out of Xiaohua's body, heading towards the place where Panga's axe fell. Who knew that these two strange beasts were so powerful? The moment the green-robed Xiaohua slipped out, Di Ting immediately noticed and turned around to ask. Xiaohua hastily opened his mouth and transmitted his voice. Seniors, Junior feels that you should first see who left the crystals in Imperial Heaven Tower and who placed that divine artifact on Heavenspan Peak before talking. Only by knowing this can you find out who built the Tongtian Peak. But speaking of this, Xiaohua was a little surprised. Hundreds of millions of stone giants built the Tongtian Peak. Was it just to arouse the suspicion of these two strange beasts? To place Panga's axe? As soon as Xiaohua spoke, the two strange beasts' eyes shone with an ominous glint. One emitted a demonic aura while the other emitted a Buddhist aura. It seemed that they both wanted to kill Xiaohua. Xiaohua was slightly startled and hurriedly shouted, Seniors, this junior just came to the great desolate continent. I didn't have the chance nor the ability to build this Tongtian Peak. You naturally don't have the ability. But, if I die here today, Maitreya Buddha's Buddhist aura will definitely be. How could Di Ting be willing to listen to Xiaohua's explanation? He said coldly, abandoning the heaven-devouring beast and pouncing towards Xiaohua. Seeing that the heaven-devouring beast didn't release its aura and didn't use its divine ability, Xiaohua already had a plan in mind. He hurriedly urged his magic power to dodge. But at this moment, gotcha! A burst of light sound like thunder came from high up in the sky. Then the sound of splashing water sounded again. Not only was Xiaohua taken aback, but even Truth Listener, who was lunging over, was taken aback. It looked up in surprise and saw that the light blue sky was as smooth as a mirror. The spot where the Heaven Ascension Peak had previously pierced into the sky was now an azure hole. A large amount of water dripped down from this azure hole. In particular, around the hole, clear cracks radiated towards the entire horizon. Pieces of the sky were like shattered mirrors that collapsed along with these cracks. The strangest thing was that the azure color around the hole was also spreading in all directions along with the shattered mirror. The further away from the hole, the fainter it became. Chapter 42-38. It's raining? How can it be raining? How can it be raining now? Xiaohua was inexplicably nervous. After all, he had traveled around the Eldritch continent for decades and had seen very little water elemental energy. He had already regarded the Eldritch continent as a place where the 5 elements were incomplete. Now that the Tongtian Peak had suddenly collapsed and the sky was leaking water light, how could he not be surprised? What surprised Xiaohua was not only this, but in the sky, as the sky collapsed, the hole became bigger and bigger. The blue around the hole spread in all directions, and bright white water light fell from these holes. The dazzling color of the water light made Xiaohua's eyes unable to take it in. Is the sky collapsing, or is it raining? Looking at the sky collapsing and countless water droplets falling from the sky, Xiaohua was truly at a loss. However, when he released his divine sense and wanted to investigate, the abnormality in the divine sense immediately made his face change. He exclaimed in disbelief, This is innate heavy water? Motherfucker, where did so much innate heavy water come from? Not only was Xiaohua surprised, but the heaven-swallowing beast and Di Ting were also surprised. They looked up at the innate heavy water that was like a clear stream in the beginning, but when it fell into the sky, it was like a flood. They did not know what was wrong with it. Not good. Xiaohua's heart was full of doubts, but he did not get an answer. However, when his divine sense swept across the land that had long turned into ruins within hundreds of thousands of miles, he suddenly had a kind of enlightenment. A terrible thought came from the bottom of his heart, and he could not help but exclaim, This innate heavy water falling to the ground, isn't it more powerful than the fight between two strange beasts? Two strange beasts can destroy everything within 100,000 miles, then this heavy water can destroy everything in the Eldritch continent. Is this the rhythm of the world's destruction? Thinking of this, Xiaohua's tongue was like spring thunder, and he roared at the heaven-swallowing beast and Di Ting. Speak quickly. What is going on? Damn it! The Hakan was infuriated when it heard this. A mere human dares to shout at me. Who do you think you are? Shut up! Xiaohua interrupted Di Ting's arrogance and berated. Isn't this all your fault? You knocked down the Tongtian Peak, causing the sky to collapse and the earth to sink. This is the connate heavy water, which is enough to destroy the entire primordial continent. The number of people you have killed is not something you can imagine. Even if Namo Methreya came personally, he would not dare to be so bold. Hurry up and tell this Xiao what's going on. Let's hurry. It's too late. Hurry, let's hurry up and fix this sky. Xiaohua knew that the sky had just collapsed and had yet to take shape. Although he didn't know what had happened, if he didn't take action now and continue to dawdle with these two strange beasts, it would be too late for him to do anything. As he spoke, Xiaohua slapped the top of his head. Buddhist light shot out, and Bodhi flew out of his Naiwan palace. Bodhi didn't understand what was going on at first, but with a thought from Xiaohua, he instantly understood what was going on. Bodhi's face fell, and he shot up into the sky while chanting, Namo Methreya Buddha. His hands formed a seal, and the clear water bottle appeared in his Buddhist seal. At the same time, the clear water bottle shone brightly, as if a sun was born from it. Wherever the Buddhist light shone, the connate true water would fall into the clear water bottle. A ferocious glint flashed through Di Ting's eyes when he saw Bodhi appear. However, Bodhi ignored him and used his ability to collect the connate heavy water instead. Di Ting gritted his teeth and temporarily suppressed his vile thoughts. Let's go. Seeing this, the heaven-devouring beast narrowed its eyes and followed Bodhi into the sky. It even shouted, We'll go and see what's going on. The Harkin responded faintly as it flew up into the air as well. Just a moment ago, these two opponents were still locked in a fierce battle of life and death. But now that they were on the brink of death, they finally let go of the vigilance that had existed for countless years. Xiaohua was some distance away from Bodhi. He also released his divine sense and enveloped the space within 1,000 miles. All the connate heavy water that fell down was absorbed into his space. Seeing that his mind was useful, Xiaohua expanded his mind bit by bit, wanting to absorb more of the innate heavy water into his space even though his mind was corroded by the innate heavy water and waves of sourness came from his mind like ants biting at him. However, Xiaohua had overestimated his divine arts. His psyche might be able to expand to tens of thousands of miles, but the innate heavy water was everywhere within 10,000 miles. Furthermore, it was pouring down endlessly. Xiaohua's psyche still had some energy left over to prevent the water from leaking out, but after 10,000 miles, it was beyond his power. A lot of heavy water leaked out from his psyche and landed on the ground. Rumble. At this time, The connate true water that fell from the sky had already begun to wash the ground like a mountain flood. Rumbling sounds came from afar. Xiaohua didn't need to release his divine sense at all, nor did he need to fly over to check. He already knew that this was the connate heavy water that fell into the mountain range and washed it down. The signs of the collapse of the mountain and the earth were beginning to appear. The prelude to the destruction of the world had already begun. Moreover, even if Xiaohua used his heels to think, he could imagine that in this mountain range on this earth, who knew how many living beings would be annihilated by this landslide? Xiaohua even had a premonition that if there was no way to mend the sky, all the living beings in the entire primitive continent would be wiped out from the earth by the connate heavy water. No matter how strong or weak they were. No. I definitely can't let this kind of tragedy happen. Xiaohua saw that his remedy was like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. He made a prompt decision to withdraw his divine sense. His figure flashed with lightning as he flew towards the sky. As he flew, he pondered, collecting the connate heavy water like this is only a temporary solution. If I don't find the source of the connate heavy water, this disaster won't stop at all. Xiaohua flew for a while. Then his eyes turned rapidly. He stopped and raised his hand to take out Xiaodou, which he hadn't used for a long time. At this time, Xiaodou had already merged with Xiaohua's blood essence. Although Xiaohua still didn't know how to use it, it could be considered to have a slight connection with Xiaodou. Xiaohua shook his hand and took out Xiaodou. Unfortunately, when the connate heavy water fell into Xiaodou, Xiaodou didn't move at all. It was like an ordinary object, allowing the connate heavy water to wash over it. Sigh. Xiaohua sighed. Knowing that this item was once again useless, he dejectedly put away the small bucket and continued to fly. After flying for an entire hour, he finally managed to arrive at the place where the Tongtian Peak pierced the sky. At this moment, this place had already become a kind of chaotic color. That endless innate heavy water gushed out in droves, as if the heavenly river was suddenly spilling out. This heavy water landed on the light protecting Xiaohua's body, emitting a sizzling sound. Admittedly, the heavy water was placed at the side, but Xiaohua's mana consumption was also extremely great. The heaven-swallowing beast and Diting had already arrived. The two strange beasts maintained a certain distance and looked at the waves in the sky somewhat foolishly. No one knew what they were thinking. Seniors, do you have any ideas? Xiaohua suppressed the anger in his chest and asked in a low voice. Diting turned its head and replied somewhat disdainfully, "Of course I don't have any ideas. Otherwise, why would I look at it so foolishly?" The heaven-swallowing beast looked at Xiaohua and forced its mouth open. Faint ripples flickered in the space of several thousand li. The connate heavy water within this range immediately turned into a torrent and rushed into the heaven-swallowing beast's mouth. However, just as the ripples in the space passed, countless connate heavy water fell again. It didn't stop for too long. The heaven-swallowing beast opened its mouth a few more times and swallowed a few more connate heavy water. Only then did it open its mouth and say, "Do you understand? We only have these methods. However, it seems similar to your method. It can't solve this disaster." Xiaohua knew that these two strange beasts were similar to the desolate continent's strange beasts. Although they had extremely powerful strength, the divine abilities they knew were limited. They definitely couldn't do something like patching the sky. Xiaohua pondered for a moment. His hands moved and tens of thousands of crystal lights fell into the sky. Soon after, Xiaohua raised his hand. Rumble. The space within 10,000 li trembled. Layers of ripples were produced. Within the ripples, pieces of brilliance appeared and turned into earthy yellow restrictions. They blocked the connate heavy water within 10,000 li. Moreover, Xiaohua slapped the door with his hand. Connate true qi spurted out and Xiaohua also rushed into the sky. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua landed in the air. He opened his mouth and spat out one armor inscription after another. These armor inscriptions took the shape of a square in the sky. The square inscriptions neatly arranged themselves according to the words and sentences. In just a moment, they formed a word wall and a word mountain, blocking the innate heavy water inside the hole. Seeing that the spell and inscriptions were effective, Xiaohua was overjoyed. His figure teleported and flew in another direction. He wanted to use these methods to repair the hole in the distance. But before he could cast the spell, rumble! A huge sound of water came from beside him. Xiao Hua's Dao Gate imprisonment and the Confucian cultivator's defense formation were unable to resist the heavy pressure of the connate heavy water. In the end, the connate heavy water broke through and turned into tens of thousands of feet of water falling from the sky. Fellow Taoists. Seeing that all the restrictions were broken, Xiao Hua panicked for no reason. His gaze swept across the sky that had collapsed a lot. A kind of panic that he had never felt before emerged from the bottom of his heart. Almost without any hesitation, he raised his hand and slapped the door on his head. He released his doppelgangers and shouted somewhat hurriedly, "Let's work together and block these holes." Yes. The doppelgangers sensed the panic in Xiao Hua's heart. They didn't say a second word and flew in all directions. One by one, they used their magical powers. In the hundreds of thousands of li in the sky, all kinds of brilliance flashed, all kinds of heaven and earth origin chi surged, and a series of earth-shaking sounds and ghostly sounds were incessantly heard. Sure enough, people's hearts moved. In just a few minutes, the majestic rain finally stopped. Not a single drop of connate heavy water fell. Chapter 42-39. Phew! Xiao Hua heaved a long sigh of relief. He scanned the ground with his divine sense and saw that the place that had been ravaged by the two beasts had become a thin swamp in such a short period of time. The connate heavy water was different from ordinary rain. Many mountains and rocks were corroded. Except for special places, the soil on the ground couldn't seep in. However, as long as there were some cracks in the ground, the connate heavy water was pervasive. If the entire primitive continent was drenched by this connate heavy water, not an inch of land would be left, and not even a blade of grass would be left. The end of the world wasn't a lie. Xiao Hua sighed in his heart and withdrew his divine sense. He looked up again. The azure water was still spreading in all directions, and the sky was still collapsing wherever the water passed. He hurriedly said to the two beasts in the distance, "Seniors, you must have seen how I did it, right? Seniors, this is all you need to do. This is all I can do. I still have to take you fellow Taoists to other places. If it's possible, I implore you to lend a hand, or you can ask other seniors in the primitive continent to lend a hand." The heaven-devouring beast looked at the sky and said, "If it's normal, I can naturally lend a hand. However, I can't even take care of myself right now. I don't even know when I'll die, so I'm afraid I can't help you. As for the help you speak of, as far as I know, there's nothing in the primitive continent that can help you. Moreover, even if there is, this connate heavy water won't affect them, so they won't lend a hand." Xiao Hua said furiously, "This connate heavy water might not affect them, but this connate heavy water can annihilate low-level primitive beasts. Just, how many living beings are there?" At this point, Xiao Hua stopped. Primitive beasts were different from humans. In their eyes, they only had themselves. Most of the time, they didn't even care about their own kind. How could they care about the lives of other races? Take the two exotic beasts in front of him for example. Their strength far exceeded his. They were basically heavily injured now, but if they made a move, they would be several times stronger than him, and the effect would be much better. However, for the sake of their own survival, they would definitely not make a move. This was because they weren't humans. Even if they cultivated for 1,000,000 years, they probably wouldn't have a human nature. Forget it. Xiao Hua shook his head slightly and ordered the scholarly cultivator Xiao Hua and the others to head to another place to seal the collapsed sky. Then, he transmitted his voice to the two strange beasts. "Seniors, this is all Junior's wishful thinking. Whatever Seniors think and do is Senior's business. However, Junior has a feeling that this disaster will absolutely not end so simply. Although Junior has tried his best to stop it, Junior doesn't know how effective it will be. Therefore, this Junior would like to earnestly request the two seniors to explain the ins and outs of the matter clearly. This Junior might be able to find something strange from within and find a way to eradicate this disaster." "What do you want to know?" the Harkin asked calmly. "Seniors, who are the venerable dragon god and the Buddha lord of Namo Maitreya Buddha? How did they get here? What were they doing here? Also, apart from them, were there any other seniors here? That divine artifact. Where did it go?" Xiao Hua voiced out his doubts in one breath. Unfortunately, the Harkin and the heaven-swallowing beast didn't listen to him at all. They berated him almost in unison. "How dare you? How can a little ant like you know about this kind of thing? Good, good, good. Xiao Hua's grief and indignation almost reached the extreme. He pointed his finger and said, "This kind of thing is the business of the gods and Buddhas. It has nothing to do with us little ants. This junior won't ask about it again in the future. However, seniors, this junior knows that your origins are extraordinary. However, seniors, take a look. Heaven connecting peak collapsed because of your fight, and the sky also collapsed because of you. The billions of lives on this earth are in danger because of your grievances. They will fall into the 9 underworlds. This kind of sin, not to mention Namo Maitreya, even Mahavairocana's true body, and even the tens of thousands of Buddhas of the Thunder Temple can't bear it, right?" After saying that, Xiao Hua no longer paid attention to the 2 strange beasts. He stepped on lightning and went in the direction of Xiao Hua and the others. Damn it! Di Ting's eyes glinted fiercely as he looked at Xiao Hua's back. The light of Buddha under his feet turned into sword light, and he looked like he was about to attack. However, when he glanced at the heaven-devouring beast, he saw a sneer in the beast's eyes. Di Ting was shocked again and hurriedly retracted the light of Buddha. He moved further away from the heaven-devouring beast. Gotcha! It was also at this moment that the seal that Xiao Hua previously added above the 2 beasts now cracked again. Drops of innate heavy water seeped out from the crack. Shwa! A phantasm appeared in the air. Xiao Hua's figure appeared again. He launched several symbols to seal the crack. However, before he could leave, another crack appeared in the sky not far away. Xiao Hua had no choice but to seal it again. After a while, Xiao Hua finally sealed the sky within 10,000 miles. He didn't even look at the 2 strange beasts. He sighed. It's better to let it out than to block it. Then, he disappeared again. Humph, he's just a little ant. Does he think he's the dragon god? The heaven-swallowing beast looked at Xiao Hua's back and snorted coldly. Beside him, Di Ting chimed in. Don't underestimate him, heaven-devouring beast. One of his incarnations is in the form of a dragon. If he can find the dragon's remains and obtain the dragon's horns and bones, he will definitely become venerable dragon god's greatest enemy in the future. How dare he? The heaven-swallowing beast roared. I'll eat him right now. However, the heaven-swallowing beast roared again. Whether the dragon god is alive or dead, and where his remains are, I don't even know. How can a little ant like him find it? I'm not worried about this at all. However, I do know that one of this little thing's avatars is cultivating the Dharma of Namo Maitreya Buddha. He's now competing with Namo Maitreya Buddha for the Buddha fruit. This Buddha fruit's Buddhist light. Hee, it won't be used to find the remains, right? Damn it! The Harkin cursed angrily. The heaven-swallowing beast had hit the nail on the head. However, Huang Xiaolong was clear that he could kill Xiao Hua, but Xiao Hua had too many clones, not to mention the number of Fortune Gate's disciples. After Huang Xiaolong killed Xiao Hua's clones, not to mention the fact that he might not survive, even if he did, how was he going to face the heaven-devouring beast? Boom! Right at this time, not far away from the 2 strange beasts, at the spot where the heaven-connecting peak pierced into the sky, a stream of jade-green water broke through Xiao Hua's seal and rushed towards the boundless land. Near the green water, countless cracks appeared. The seal within 1,000 miles collapsed piece by piece, and the Xiantian heavy water fell uncontrollably. Xiao Hua, who had arrived just in time, didn't appear. In the time it took to finish a cup of tea, all of the seals within 1,000 miles had been broken by the heavy water, and it poured down like a heavenly river. Sigh. Only now did Xiao Hua's sigh faintly come out. He had already discovered it earlier. It wasn't that he didn't want to teleport over, but the sky tens of thousands of miles away also needed to be sealed. He was only late by half a cup of tea's time. Everything he had done before had turned into flowing water. Even if Xiao Hua had 10 avatars. Boom, boom, boom. Immediately afterward, a series of explosions rang out within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. The seals from before were broken one after another. In the face of the might of heaven and earth, the methods of a grand ascension stage cultivator were truly insignificant. Ants, that's right, ants. Xiao Hua listened to the incessant explosions and the sound of the heavy water falling, and he looked up into the sky and let out a long sigh. There are times when a person's strength is limited. Wanting to compete with the heavens is nothing more than a joke for a frog at the bottom of a well. Fellow Taoist, fellow Taoist. At this moment, the scholarly cultivator Xianxia and the others had all teleported over. All of them appeared to be exhausted and they said, "We've already done our best. Please forgive us, fellow Taoist." "Sigh, you've all worked hard, fellow Taoists." Xianxia clasped his hands and said with a wry smile, "If we were to guard the area within 1,000 miles, we would be fine. However, the sky is collapsing extremely quickly, and it's already over 1,000,000 miles away. Even if we were to guard this area, we wouldn't be able to do anything beyond 100,000 miles away. All right. Everyone, please return." Wait. At this point, Xiaohua's brows furrowed, and he looked into the distance. He raised a hand and said, "We'll look elsewhere." "Fellow Taoist," the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua said in a low voice, "there's no need for us to give up now, right? There are billions of living beings on the primitive continent. If we don't act, it really could be the end of the world." "The end of the world? That would be the end of the primitive continent. It has nothing to do with us." Xiaohua chuckled lightly. "Not to mention that with our cultivations, such an apocalyptic calamity might not be able to descend upon us. Let's go." While speaking, Xiaohua flew away. The group of clones looked at each other. Although they were puzzled, they didn't receive any hint or telepathic message from Xiaohua, so they didn't ask any more questions and followed Xiaohua. Heaven-devouring beast. Seeing Xiaohua and the others leave, Ting turned to the heaven-devouring beast and said, "What this little guy said is somewhat reasonable. This matter is indeed strange. I thought you were the one who built Heaven-Connecting Peak and placed Panga's axe on it, but you thought I was the one who built Heaven-Connecting Peak and placed Panga's axe on it. Then, who built Heaven-Connecting Peak and placed Panga's axe on it?" The heaven-devouring beast shook its head slightly. "I don't know who it is. I'm afraid it has something to do with the purpose of my Lord Dragon God and your Buddha Lord coming here." At this point, the heaven-devouring beast looked at the falling innate heavy water and said with a bitter smile, "As for the purpose of building Heaven-Connecting Peak, it's naturally to accumulate innate heavy water. The purpose of placing Panga's axe on Heaven-Connecting Peak is to attract you and me, so that we can push down Heaven-Connecting Peak while fighting." Chapter 42-40. If he has the Pango axe, why would he need us to take action? He can just chop the Tongtian Peak in half. Ting was puzzled. Besides, if he wants to accumulate the connate heavy water, why would he waste so much effort to build the Tongtian Peak? The heaven-devouring beast smiled bitterly and shook his head. "How would I know? Perhaps he wants us to fight to the death before he can make a move? Or maybe he doesn't have the ability to wield the Pango axe. However, this little fellow is right." Although Ting hated Xiaohua, he agreed with Xiaohua's thoughts like the heaven-devouring beast. "I was the one who bumped into the heaven-piercing peak. Although I didn't set up the connate heavy water, I can't escape responsibility. Although I'm not afraid of any negative karma, if this affects my Buddha Lord and allows this little ant's clone to benefit, then I'll really be ashamed of my Buddha Lord." At this point, Ting raised his head as if he was listening to something. "No, I have to find a way with this little guy." "Where did this little guy go? It's only been a short while, yet you can't find any trace of him?" The heaven-devouring beast sneered. "Aren't our methods 100 times more powerful than his? Why should we go with him? Although he's very weak, he has a lot of methods. Don't forget, he's a human, known as the spirit of all things. Their heads are the most powerful divine weapons in the chaos divine world." I know." As Ting spoke, he suddenly realized something. Without waiting for him to say more, the heaven-devouring beast also understood. The two beasts looked at each other and shouted in unison again. "Pango axe! This audacious thing is going to find the Pango axe." That's right, Xiaohua released the green-robed Xiaohua earlier to find the Pango axe. However, he received a transmission from the green-robed Xiaohua just now. The green-robed Xiaohua couldn't collect the Pango axe, so he let Xiaohua go. Xiaohua naturally couldn't let Ting and the heaven-devouring beast know what he was doing, so he pretended to be dispirited and left with his clones. As soon as Xiaohua left the range of Ting's detection, he immediately turned invisible and fled toward the green-robed Xiaohua. However, he knew that with Truth Listener's ability, it wouldn't give him too much time, so he didn't dare delay for even a moment. Green-robed Xiao Hua was in the depths of the earth, a rather strange place. However, this was not outside of Xiao Hua's expectations. Panga's axe was known as a divine weapon. Even the void could not contain its sharp edge. How could an ordinary place hold Panga's axe? If it weren't for the special seal on the Tongtian Peak, the Pango axe would have been able to split the Tongtian Peak into two halves. Xiao Hua's figure appeared in the void. His gaze fell on the depths of the earth, where a layer of strange restrictions flickered. He seemed to be deep in thought. This restriction was different from ordinary restrictions. There were some faint black patterns on it. The black patterns were like black fish that slowly flowed within the restriction. Near the restriction, the water-type heaven-earth yuan qi that Xiao Hua couldn't find previously was now in sight. Fellow Taoist. Green-robed Xiao Hua's face carried a trace of embarrassment. He pointed at Panga's axe that was lying on top of the restriction and said, "I received fellow Taoist's instructions and followed fellow Taoist's speculation all the way here. This thing is really strange. It's different from ordinary magic treasures. Divine sense can't find it at all. Even the naked eye can't see it. If I hadn't searched carefully, I definitely wouldn't have been able to find it." Xiao Hua nodded. He didn't ask about Panga's axe. Instead, he pointed at the restriction and asked, "What about this restriction? What's its origin? Or what's its use?" Green-robed Xiao Hua was stunned. He quickly replied, "This restriction is incomplete. I have already examined it. It doesn't have any use at all." Good. Xiao Hua smiled. He almost clapped his hands and said, "If it weren't for this restriction, I don't know where this Panga's axe would have fallen. It seems like I have fate with this divine weapon." As he spoke, Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and grabbed the handle of Panga's axe. However, a strange thing happened. Xiao Hua's hand swept past the handle of the axe. It was as if the handle of Panga's axe was empty and didn't exist at all. An illusion? Xiao Hua turned pale with fright. He used his hand to grab it a few more times, but it was all empty. Xiao Hua's eyes turned a few times. He turned around and patted his forehead. He opened his delirium eyes. There was no need for Xiao Hua to turn around. The nine-colored brilliance of Panga's delirium eyes had already reflected pain on Xiao Hua's delirium eyes. Damn it! Xiao Hua hurriedly closed his delirium eyes and turned his head to look at Panga's axe. He saw that Panga's axe was still Panga's axe, quietly lying on top of the restriction. His divine sense also passed through empty space. Alas, a divine weapon is a divine weapon after all. The majestic appearance of Di Ting holding Panga's axe and splitting Tongtian Peak appeared in Xiao Hua's mind. He sighed and said, "It's definitely not something an ordinary cultivator can obtain. Now, facing a divine weapon, I don't even have the ability to touch a divine weapon. What a pity, what a pity. Fellow Taoist is too weak." Just as Xiao Hua was regretting, Dragon Vein Xiao Hua's voice sounded, "Others can't do it, but how can I not?" Not bad, not bad. Xiao Hua suddenly woke up. He patted his forehead and said, "I forgot about you. You're the condensed body of Dragon Domain Dragon Cleansing Liquid. You're different from us. You can't even enter I's space. Presumably, you can pick up this thing. I'll give it a try first." Dragon Vein Xiao Hua came out from Xiao Hua's body and said with a smile, "I heard from that heaven-swallowing beast that this divine artifact seems to be related to his dragon god. This poor Taoist is also a five-clawed golden dragon. Perhaps I can succeed." "Fellow Taoist, please." Xiao Hua smiled and stepped aside. He said, "If you can't do it, we'll leave now. Presumably, Di Ting has already woken up and is looking for us. If they find out that we're thinking about Panga's axe, I'm afraid that heaven-swallowing beast won't let us off." "All right." Dragon Vein Xiao Hua raised his hand. 5 dragon claws stretched out and landed on the Panga's axe's handle. A layer of fine lines flashed on the axe's handle and faced Dragon Vein Xiao Hua's dragon claws. Rumble Xiao Hua's surroundings rumbled. It was completely different from when Di Ting picked up Panga's axe. However, since there was an abnormality, it meant that there was a chance. Xiao Hua's heart couldn't help but raise. Woo! A whimpering sound came from the space. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua's dragon claws retracted. The Panga's axe's blade streaked across the void. The entire Pangu's axe was really picked up by Dragon Vein Xiaohua. Go! Xiaohua was overjoyed. He urged, once this place moves, Di Ting will know. Let's go quickly. No. Dragon Vein Xiaohua smiled bitterly. His dragon claws seemed to be holding a heavy object. He hammered it under his body and said, "This thing is incomparably heavy. If I don't take it, I won't be able to escape." Wait a moment. Xiaohua hurriedly flicked his sleeve and took out the Kunlun mirror. However, he looked at the Kunlun mirror and then looked at the Pangu's axe. He smiled bitterly and said, "Forget it. You better hurry up and refine it." Puff. Dragon Vein Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly spat a mouthful of dragon qi on the Pangu's axe. Soon after, he chanted the heavenly dragon technique. However, in a moment, the Pangu's axe jumped a few times and fell down again. There were no other changes. Not good. That guy is coming. Xiaohua was suddenly alarmed. He hurriedly shouted, "Fellow Taoist, if you can't take it, we'll leave right away. Little funnel, quickly take out little funnel." Green-robed Xiaohua suddenly shouted from the side. "That thing has been refined with your blood essence. Perhaps it can be used." Yes. Xiaohua was currently like a patient seeking help. He took out little funnel without hesitation. Sure enough, little funnel fell below the Pangu's axe and just happened to take it in. Then, Dragon Vein Xiaohua's dragon qi landed on little funnel and immediately took little funnel along with the Pangu's axe into his body. It was also at this moment that an extremely dim fluctuation flashed by. Di Ting and the heaven-devouring beast's figures appeared above the three people's heads. The heaven-devouring beast's gloomy voice sounded, "Little thing, quickly take out the Pangu's axe. This thing isn't something you can have." Xiaohua's eyes slightly narrowed. He looked indifferently at the heaven-devouring beast and said with a smile, "Senior, which eye of yours saw this junior take out the Pangu's axe? There's the aura of the Pangu's axe here." The heaven-devouring beast simply didn't allow Xiaohua to explain and said, "Moreover, there are no other strange beasts within 1,000 li. If you didn't take it, where would the Pangu's axe go? Quickly take it out. Otherwise, I'll kill you right now." Hee hee. Xiaohua laughed coldly. It was this junior who took away the Pangu's axe. What's wrong? Something that has fallen into this Xiao's hands. Even immortals can forget about taking it away from this Xiao. If you want to take it, then take out some real ability and snatch it from this Xiao's hands. Otherwise, don't even think about it. Damn it, damn it, damn it. The heaven-devouring beast was furious. Black gas splashed out from its body and a powerful aura quickly enveloped Xiaohua. Xiaohua slapped the top of his head and several streams of true energy spurted out. A big hand also appeared in the aura. The Di Ting was happy at first, but after a moment, he hesitated. Seeing Xiaohua's big hand shatter in the heaven-devouring beast's aura and Xiaohua was about to activate his divine ability, the Di Ting hurriedly said, "Heaven-devouring beast." "What?" The heaven-devouring beast said impatiently. "Scram to the side first. Wait until I crush this little ant to death. Then I'll go with you." At this point, the heaven-devouring beast seemed to have thought of something. Its eyes flickered and that murderous aura also stopped. "Little thing, what's this formless soul of yours? It looks interesting." As the Di Ting spoke, a Buddhist light appeared from its ear and landed behind the heaven-devouring beast. The formless nascent soul formed a seal with both hands and revealed its figure with an expression of disbelief. "Ah! What's this?" At this moment, the heaven-devouring beast noticed the green-robed Xiaohua. The heaven-devouring beast was shocked. Its figure flashed and hid to the side. With its strength, it actually didn't notice how the green-robed Xiaohua went over. If the green-robed Xiaohua attacked, the heavily injured heaven-devouring beast would definitely suffer a great loss. Xiaohua's face also carried some shame and anger. He said coldly, "That's I's formless nascent soul." "What's wrong? Senior, are you interested?" Chapter 42-41. Formless nascent soul? Di Ting slightly frowns as if he is thinking. After a moment, he looks at the heaven-swallowing beast as if asking, "Heaven-swallowing beast, I seem to have some impression. There seems to be a very small world under the great desolate world. The humans in this world call themselves immortals, right? How would I know about the matters of the human race? The heaven-swallowing beast is on guard while saying coldly, "My Lord Dragon God is not a human. Only your Buddha Lord knows about the matters of the human race, right?" Ting nods. Although my Buddha Lord is a human, his cultivation method is different from that of the human race. I don't know much about it. However, I vaguely heard that there are many worlds under the immortal world. In those lowly worlds, there are very few humans who cultivate nascent soul. Ah? Xiao Hua is stunned and says in surprise, "Senior, what are you talking about? How come I don't understand? How did you come here?" Ting doesn't explain to him and suddenly asks, "Answer immediately." Junior took advantage of the teleportation array to go to the hidden immortal continent to train. Suddenly, the teleportation channel collapsed. Junior fell into the void and then fainted. When I woke up, I bumped into a mountain. Xiao Hua's spring and autumn brush is more proficient than Yabai. He says it without hesitation. Then Junior saw the stone giant then. No need to say any more. Ting waves his hand and asks again, "You just said that the things you obtained are things that even immortals can't snatch away. Have you seen immortals?" Immortals? That is Junior's cultivation goal. Xiao Hua's eyes are filled with infinite longing, he says anxiously. Could it be that Senior has seen immortals? Oh, Senior. Could it be that you are an immortal bird? You don't need to know our origin. Ting doesn't answer Xiao Hua's question at all. He turns to the heaven-swallowing beast and says, "Did you hear that? This little guy is really an ant. Even if that Pangu axe is placed in front of him, he can't pick it up. Don't forget that day, this little guy's clone held Pangu axe, but he couldn't touch it at all." Is that so? The heaven-swallowing beast already understands what Ting is talking about. However, he can't be sure whether Phoenix Body Xiao Hua has touched Pangu axe or not. Xiao Hua was even more bewildered, and he asked curiously, "Senior? My clone did not touch the Pangu axe at that time. But why couldn't he touch it? I can see it with my eyes, but I can't sense it with my divine sense." Ha ha! The Hakan burst into laughter. Divine artifacts can only be used by existences from the great desolate realm of the gods. You are not from the great desolate realm of the gods, so how can you possibly use them? What's more, this Pangu axe is only a divine shell. It's not complete at all. It's even more impossible for you humans to touch it. Shut up! The heaven-devouring beast was enraged. Even if it's a divine shell, it's still Pangu's axe. Hee, I didn't say that it wasn't the Pangu axe. The Hakan laughed. Actually, I was just bluffing this little guy. That clone of his didn't even come into contact with the Pangu axe. If he admitted it, it would mean that he knew that he couldn't pick up the Pangu axe. That would also mean that he had seen the Pangu axe before. But what he just said clearly, he didn't know. The heaven-devouring beast obviously didn't think as much as the Hakan. It was a little stunned. In the end, it could only ask, "The Hakan, so you think that he didn't take the Pangu axe?" And yes. The Hakan replied without hesitation. Then what is he doing here? Oh yes, little guy, what are you doing here? The Hakan also turned to ask Xiao Hua. It's like this. Xiao Hua's mood was very good at this time. He smiled and said, "Junior saw that the seal in the sky was ineffective, so I asked a few of my fellow Taoists to go underground and see where the innate heavy water could seep to. It would also be good for us to return to the stone giants and let them find a place to stay." After saying that, he pointed at the strange seal and said, "Junior's fellow Taoists saw that there was a strange seal here, so he asked me to come and take a look." And the Hakan had already seen this broken seal, so it didn't care. It asked, "Then, do you have any countermeasures now?" Xiao Hua smiled bitterly, shrugged and said, "What else can I do? Dig a deep hole and accumulate more food." What? What does this mean? The Hakan and the heaven-swallowing beast were stunned. Wherever the innate true water goes, the mountains will collapse and the earth will split. It can destroy everything, and nothing will be born. Xiao Hua explained, but the innate true water is not easy to seep into the ground. The stone giants can dig a hole under the ground. As long as the entrance is sealed and not let the innate heavy water seep in, they should be able to survive. What about accumulating food? The Hakan was very curious. Us humans eat food. Without food, we can't survive. The stone giants eat fire elemental primordial stones, so they have to accumulate a lot of primordial stones. Before the innate heavy waterfalls, they will rely on these primordial stones to survive. Sigh. The heaven-swallowing beast sighed. What you said might be reasonable. But it's just like how you sealed the sky earlier. It's only a temporary measure. Once the entire primeval continent is destroyed and the ground is filled with natural heavy water, how long can your so-called seal last? Is there that much innate heavy water? Xiaohua asked meaningfully. Why not? The heaven-swallowing beast said without hesitation, the water elemental energy in the prehistoric continent has already disappeared by millions. Cough, cough. The Harken coughed, and the heaven-swallowing beast also woke up. However, since it had already said that, it still continued. After accumulating so much water elemental energy for so many years, why can't it drown the entire prehistoric continent? Seniors, do you really not know who it is? Xiaohua couldn't help but ask again. We don't know. The Harken and the heaven-swallowing beast replied. Forget it. Xiaohua said helplessly, we'll save as many as we can and hold on for as long as we can. After saying that, Xiaohua waved at the dragon gates Xiaohua. The two of them, together with the green-robed Xiaohua, prepared to leave. Where are you going? The Harken suddenly asked. Senior, you can clearly see what this junior has done. Xiaohua didn't even turn his head as he replied. Junior isn't willing to let them be destroyed just like this after they've just gained intelligence. By the time you return, they will have already turned into powder. The Harken sneered and said, We'll go with you. Seniors? Xiaohua was a little stunned. Only now did he understand that the two strange beasts didn't come just for the Pangu axe. Don't resist. The Harken ordered indifferently. Xiaohua only felt a stream of light flash in front of his eyes, and his whole body floated. In just the time it took to eat a meal, the light in front of Xiaohua's eyes disappeared. When his body sank, what appeared in front of him was the mountain peak he had crashed into. Damn it! When Xiaohua saw the mountain peak, he immediately thought of something. How does this old thing know everything? Could it be that he also knows about the teleportation array? Of course, Xiaohua wouldn't ask too much. When he was about to instruct the dragon vein Xiaohua, he was suddenly stunned again. Because the heaven-swallowing beast, who had already disappeared when he flew up to fight for the Pangu axe, was now standing not far from him. Thinking that he had hurriedly collected the sky-soaring vine and didn't look for the heaven-swallowing beast, Xiaohua was a little embarrassed and hurriedly asked, Heaven-swallowing beast, why are you here? Heaven-swallowing beast? The heaven-swallowing beast at the side was stunned. The heaven-swallowing beast scratched its head and answered honestly, Taoist, I don't know. It's me. The Harken replied faintly, I met him on the way, so I brought him back as well. Great-grandfather. The heaven-swallowing beast respectfully bowed to the Harken. Good grandson of the heaven-swallowing beast. The Harken proudly patted the heaven-swallowing beast's head and slightly slanted his eyes to look at the heaven-swallowing beast's face, which was green and red, and said with a smile, You can stay here with great-grandfather. With great-grandfather here, you definitely won't suffer. The Harken. The heaven-swallowing beast was a little embarrassed and angry. You. Why did you name him Heaven-swallowing beast? The Harken had an innocent face and replied, Heaven-swallowing beast, you're mistaken. This little guy can eat, and it said that he can even eat the sky, so he's called Heaven-swallowing beast. This name wasn't given by me. You. The heaven-swallowing beast was fuming with anger, but he didn't know how to refute the Harken. Only the heaven-swallowing beast stood beside the proud Harken in bewilderment. Xiaohua didn't have the time to say anything to the two strange beasts. He brought the dragon vein Xiaohua and the green-robed Xiaohua high up in the sky. Wherever his divine sense passed, there was no change in the sky. Not even a single dark cloud could be seen. However, Xiaohua's sharp senses had already discovered that there were slight changes in the water element origin energy. Presumably, the changes in the heaven-connecting peak had already affected the entire desolate mainland. Although he couldn't see the collapsing sky and the world-destroying innate heavy water, the curtain of the heaven-connecting peak had already been lifted. However, the prelude to destruction had already been lifted by an invisible hand. Death was only a matter of time. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He took out the Kunlun mirror and summoned the Fortune Gate's disciples. He roughly explained what had happened and said, "This old man can once again guarantee that the innate heavy water won't have any effect on this old man, and you're definitely not in any danger. However, the desolate mainland has already been enlightened." Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization and slapped his forehead. He said regretfully, "Fuck, this old man is really stupid. I was thinking about how to seal the collapsing sky and completely forgot about taking drastic measures to deal with the situation. You will all set out and go to various places. Take all the spatial rings and universe bags. If you can take them, take them. If you can't take them, then tell them that this old man wants them to dig a hole in the ground and hide them there. This old man will discuss with your martial uncles to take them into the Kunlun Immortal realm. Alright, all of you don't have to fly too far. If you see the sky collapsing or the innate heavy water falling down, quickly turn back." Yes. The group of disciples didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly flew to various places according to the previous arrangements. Chapter 42-42. After the group of disciples left, Xiaohua summoned his clones. He raised his hand and patted the Kunlun mirror. The Kunlun mirror split into several copies. With a wave of his hand, the real Kunlun mirror and the fake Kunlun mirror fell into the hands of everyone. Then, Xiaohua transmitted his voice. "Fellow Taoists, the situation is urgent. This poor Taoist will not say much. The Kunlun mirror of the Confucian Taoist is real. The Kunlun mirrors of the other fellow cultivators are all fake. You also have Chenkuan bags, Long Bei, and other items. You've collected all of them. As for those that you can't collect, it depends on your cultivation. Since you can enter and exit the space freely, you must have the ability to put things in it. You've also collected all of them. Of course, there may be some fellow Taoists who can't do it for the time being. Fellow Taoists, for the sake of the creatures of the primitive continent, fellow Taoists, have worked hard." "Yes, we understand." After Xiaohua finished speaking, the clones all left. Except for Xiaohua, the other clones flew around and tried to understand their relationship with the space. They tried their best to sense the position of the space, so that they could take in the beasts before the innate heavy water fell. The sky collapsed and the innate heavy water fell in an instant. Xiaohua was only a Mahayana human cultivator. How many creatures of the primitive continent could he save? Even if he had the space to rely on, how many creatures had he rescued in the entire Eldritch continent? His strength could only be a drop in the bucket in front of the power of heaven and earth. Moreover, Xiaohua went to the primitive continent and taught the primitive continent. He had already gained the merit of teaching. Xiaohua, a Confucian cultivator, had stepped into the literary star. At this time, even if Xiaohua didn't do anything, this merit had already been realized. If it was other utilitarian cultivators, they would inevitably care about themselves and no longer care about these low-level creatures of the primitive continent that had nothing to do with them. However, Xiaohua was just this kind of merciful person. He didn't teach the untainted continent for the sake of teaching. He truly did want all living things to live as freely as he did. However, heaven and earth were heartless and treated all living things like straw dogs. Even living such a simple life, in the eyes of some powerful beings, for their unknown purposes, was not easy to achieve. What Xiaohua wanted to fight for the billions of living beings in the primitive continent was that tiny chance of survival. After nearly 100 years of enlightenment, Xiaohua had already been regarded as a god by the stone giants, water and wind fishmen, golden armored men, wood men, earth giants, and other low-level prehistoric beasts. Therefore, when Xiaohua appeared, he didn't need to explain too much. In just a few words, the illusion of the Kunlun mirror waved, and Xiaohua brought them into a corner of the space. In this corner of space, Xiaohua had already built a place similar to the great desolate continent for them, so they wouldn't feel unfamiliar with it. Xiaohua didn't dare to delay any longer. Not only was there not enough time, he also had to consider for the green-robed Xiaohua and the others. He was afraid that if he was too far away from his clones, they wouldn't be able to sense his space. However, the green-robed Xiaohua and the other clones were flying in all directions. It was not suitable for Xiaohua to fly to any place. Thus, he could only teleport while sensing everything in the surrounding space. For several days, other than the strange beasts that Xiaohua had brought into the space, no other strange beasts had entered the space. Xiaohua felt a chill in his heart. He knew that the green-robed Xiaohua and the others didn't have the ability to send things into the space. In these few days, the distance that his clones had flown out had probably exceeded the range of his consciousness. It was even more impossible for them to sense his space. Forget it. Xiaohua comforted himself. They have a universe bag in their hands. I'll just take as much as I can. Subsequently, Xiaohua no longer thought about it. He urged his body to fly in a certain direction. Whenever he found a low-level prehistoric beast, he would immediately put it into the space. Whenever he found a Fortune Gate disciple returning, he would immediately take their universe bag or spatial ring and send them out to continue searching for strange beasts. This continued for more than 10 days. Suddenly, Xiaohua's heart stirred. His mind hastily entered the space. He saw a stone giant with faint dragon patterns on its body standing high up in the sky. It was looking all around in a baffled manner. Good. Xiaohua was overjoyed. He didn't bother to identify which clone had sent this stone giant. With a wave of his hand, he sent this stone giant to where the strange beasts were. Since there was a first, there would naturally be a second. In the following few months, a steady stream of strange beasts were sent into the space by his clones. While Xiaohua was collecting strange beasts, he was also making arrangements for these strange beasts at the same time. On this day, Xiaohua had just finished arranging for a batch of strange beasts to be sent over. His consciousness left the space, but before he could fly away, boom boom boom. A rumbling sound, like the muffled thunder before a storm, resounded in the sky. These days, Xiaohua had been busy saving strange beasts, so he didn't look at the sky. When he heard the rumbling thunder, he was startled. He hurriedly raised his head and saw that the distant horizon had been dyed blue and gray. Although the blue and gray colors looked very beautiful, under those colors, the falling Xiantian heavy water emitted a world-destroying aura. Alas! Xiaohua sighed. He turned his head to look in the opposite direction of the sky and said in a low voice, "In the end, it still came." Before his voice fell, a kind of grief and indignation suddenly appeared in Xiaohua's heart. An indescribable emotion blocked his chest. He couldn't help but look up to the sky and roar, as if he was venting. That unyielding voice resounded between heaven and earth, resisting the rumbling thunder of the sky. "Heavenly Tao! I have cultivated for so long. Why is my strength still so weak? Why can't you give me the power to overturn the heavens? I have the power to overturn the heavens. I will definitely save the lives of the billions of creatures in the wilderness. I will definitely open a path to the heavens for them." Unfortunately, Xiaohua's sorrowful voice drifted between the heavens and the earth, but in just a moment, it was drowned out by the sound of the sky collapsing. In this world, there was no such thing as a free lunch that fell out of thin air. Xiaohua's lofty aspirations moved the heavens and the earth, but without difficult cultivation, any words were just empty words. When heaven and earth are in trouble, all living things are destroyed. The spirit of the wilderness led me to the continent. With the 7-foot body of the human race and the unyielding backbone of 10,000 years, I will leave behind the seedlings of the wilderness and prolong the offspring of the strange beasts. After Xiaohua finished venting, he knew that he didn't have much time left. He chanted and didn't dare to stay any longer, flying in a certain direction. When he flew up, the same voice came out from his body. When heaven and earth are virtuous, the green robe descends to the world, using great strength to defeat the enemy, using great power to save the world. If such a green robe can't become an immortal, who can? Ha! Xiaohua was surprised. Seeing the green robe Xiaohua flying out while singing a song, he asked, "How did you?" However, Xiaohua smiled. Since the green robe Xiaohua and the other clones could sense their own space and send in the strange beasts, they could also enter the space. Wasn't it normal for the green robe to come out from the space? The green robe Xiaohua smiled and said, "The direction I went was the direction of the sky connecting peak. There is already Xiantian heavy water there. I had already sent the educated strange beasts into the space. As for those uneducated beasts, they didn't listen to I, so I couldn't send them into the space. Therefore, after I sent the Fortune Gate's disciples in that direction into the space, I came over myself." Good. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, "So, other fellow Taoists can come over at any time, and the Fortune Gate's disciples can also be sent over? Other than the pitiful fellow Taoist Long Mai, everyone else can." The green robe Xiaohua smiled and said, Fellow Taoist should give the Kunlun mirror to fellow Taoist Long Mai. It doesn't matter. Xiao Hua smiled and said, he is a dragon, how could he be afraid of water? Fellow Taoist, summon the Fortune Gate's disciples, we will continue to work hard. The green-robed Xiao Hua flew with Xiao Hua for a while and said, maybe we can save more strange beasts before the storm arrives. Storm? Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and looked meaningfully at the green-robed Xiao Hua. He nodded and said, fellow Taoist is right. We will continue to work hard. Subsequently, Xiao Hua summoned the Fortune Gate's disciples, and everyone continued to fly in the same direction. In the sky above a mountain peak, Truth Listener and the heaven-devouring beast were looking in Xiao Hua's direction from a distance. In this direction, the torrential rain had already fallen. Countless mountains and boulders collapsed under the impact of the connate heavy water. Similarly, under the heavy rain, not to mention all the vegetation being corroded by the heavy water, many primordial beasts that did not know the truth were desperately fleeing. Some of the stronger primordial beasts were fine as they had some light around them that could temporarily resist the connate true water. Most of the strange beasts that were fleeing were low-level strange beasts that did not have much intelligence. When their bodies came in contact with the heavy water, other than some simple resistance, their flesh was corroded by the heavy water, and there were even deep bloody holes smashed by the heavy water. They fell to the ground and let out mournful screams, but these screams only lasted for a few times before disappearing. The strange beasts were either corpses riddled with holes, or bones dripping with blood and flesh after being corroded. However, this miserable scene disappeared in a few breaths of time. Under the innate heavy water, not to mention blood and bones, even mountains and rocks would melt. Di Ting. Facing the horrifying scene, the heaven-devouring beast did not frown at all. He only transmitted his voice to Di Ting. This little guy looks a little strange. He really seems to be saving those low-level strange beasts. Humph. Di Ting coldly replied, heaven-devouring beast, you don't understand the human race's cultivation at all. This little guy looks like he's saving the strange beasts, but in reality, he's accumulating merit points for himself. The more he saves, the more merit points he gets, and the faster his strength will grow. Do you think he has the leisure to do this kind of boring thing? The heaven-devouring beast laughed, and the black demonic clouds around him flickered rapidly as he said, so, your Buddha Lord used to be like this in the past. Chapter 42-43. Shut up. At the mention of Zhang Luer's past life, Di Ting flew into a rage and scolded, how can this fame-seeking thing be compared to my Buddha Lord? My Buddha Lord is the real Maitreya Buddha. What is he? But if it's as you say. The sky-devouring beast's words were not without provocation. This little guy has accumulated so much merit that his Buddhist clone will sooner or later snatch away the Buddha's light that belongs to the Maitreya Buddha. Humph! Di Ting snorted and said fiercely, if I didn't need to keep this guy as bait, I would have torn him apart and eaten him. That's strange too. The sky-devouring beast looked up at the falling rain and said curiously, it's been a few months and 40% of the entire Eldritch continent has been destroyed. Why hasn't the mastermind appeared yet? Does he really want to destroy the world? What good will it do him if all the living beings in the Eldritch continent are killed? How would I know? Di Ting gritted his teeth again and said, I've been wise all my life, but I've been schemed against by the mastermind before I die. I'm afraid some of the karma for the destruction of the world will fall on my head. At this point, Di Ting looked at the sky-devouring beast and said, don't be so smug. If I have 30%, you have to take 30%. The sky-devouring beast wagged its tail and said with a smile, I'm not a Buddhist disciple, so I don't care about this. If you say this to this little guy, it's more like it. At this point, the sky-devouring beast suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air and stood up abruptly. The sky-devouring beast's movements attracted Di Ting's attention at the same time. Di Ting hurriedly retreated and looked at the sky-devouring beast vigilantly. Di Ting. The sky-devouring beast stared in Xiao Hua's direction for a long time and said, do you think this little guy is the mastermind? What he did in front of us was all an act. How is that possible? Di Ting said with extreme disdain, I know that this guy has been in the Eldritch continent since he came. His every move is under my surveillance. Hee hee. The heaven-devouring beast laughed coldly and retorted, If I'm not wrong, then this little fellow vanished before our eyes for a period of time before Heaven Link Peak. The Harkon's aura grew cold, and even the connate heavy water that filled the sky began to show signs of freezing. Could it be that everything about this little fellow is just a disguise? Even the strength he displayed was fake? Who knows? At this moment, the heaven-devouring beast's aura slackened as it said lazily, I'm not the truth listener beast who has searched all 6 realms. Naturally, I wouldn't know about this. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Truth listener was already extremely resentful towards Xiao Hua. Now that it heard such a possibility, it became even more furious. It cursed 3 times in a row. If it wasn't for the fact that it was seriously injured, it would have flown over to kill Xiao Hua long ago, right? At this moment, Xiao Hua was not in the mood to pay attention to the guesses of the 2 strange beasts. He was racing against time to compete with the collapsing sky. He wanted to save more untainted creatures before the apocalypse arrived. In the blink of an eye, dozens of days passed. The collapsing sky increased in size and speed as time passed. In the end, it was as if a flood was pouring down from the sky. The real flood fell from the sky, passing over the flying figures of Xiao Hua and the other Fortune Gate disciples, drowning the land full of vitality and death. Sigh. Xiao Hua's figure stopped in the rain. He looked at the collapsing sky above his head and sighed. What should come will come eventually. I want to understand the law of time. I really want to stop time at this moment. Time cannot be stopped. The green-robed Xiao Hua said indifferently beside Xiao Hua. Moreover, this is an untainted land surrounded by the turbulence of time. We have already tried our best. There shouldn't be any more regrets. Except for the dragon vein, Xiao Hua's other avatars had already returned through space. At this time, the scholarly cultivator Xiao Hua comforted Xiao Hua with a trace of regret in his voice. Xiao Hua didn't look back. He just looked into the distance with compassion and didn't speak for a long time. The bone-honing Xiao Hua was a little embarrassed. He grinned and said, Haha, only in times of crisis can one's potential be unearthed. If it was normal, I don't know when I would be able to sense Shenhua continent. I don't know when I would be able to enter Shenhua continent. This is only a small step in our cultivation. It's nothing to be proud of. Xiao Hua replied indifferently. He then asked, Fellow Taoist Xiao Hua, when you see these creatures being strangled in the innate heavy water, don't you feel sorrow? Yes, why not? The bone-honing Xiao Hua grinned. But looking at his grin, how was it sorrow? Tanyu. Buddha Bodhi, who had become less talkative after arriving at the desolate land, opened his mouth. Let's go take a look and save as many as we can. After all, saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. Xiao Hua's heart was already filled with grief and indignation. When he heard the word stupa from Buddha Subhudi's mouth, he felt a burst of disgust for no reason. He glanced at Buddha Subhuti indifferently, nodded and said, That's right. For the sake of merit, we have to go forward. Xiao Hua emphasized the word merit. Others might not be able to hear it, but Buddha Subhuti naturally understood. Seeing Xiao Hua flying forward without even turning his head, Buddha Subhuti chanted, Namo Maitreya Buddha, with a miserable expression on his face. Holding up the sky with one hand had always been a divine ability of almighty beings. Xiao Hua wasn't considered an almighty at this time. Therefore, even if he wanted to do a lot, what he could achieve was pitifully little. After searching for more than 10 days, he saw the vast flood on the ground. Everything was clear and bright, and the world was filled with the aura of the innate heavy water. Xiao Hua had no choice but to give up again. He put all his clones back into his body and turned to fly back. At this point, Xiao Hua no longer had any superfluous thoughts. He had to make plans for himself. If the innate heavy water continued to fall, the entire untainted continent would be covered by the innate heavy water. Xiao Hua had to make plans for himself. It was also at this time that a whale came from afar. A primitive variant beast bobbed up and down in the innate heavy water. The brilliance around its body disappeared, and its corpse fell to the bottom of the water and disappeared. Buddha Bodhi was slightly taken aback. He said with some surprise, It's strange. The soul of this primitive variant beast Why didn't it come out? Is that so? Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows. He was also puzzled. His consciousness swept in that direction. As expected, it was empty. Destroy the world. Destroy the world. Destroy the world. Xiao Hua suddenly looked like he was struck by lightning. He stood there blankly and muttered to himself, destroy the world for what? Could it be for the souls of billions of creatures? Hurry! At this time, Xiao Hua threw away the grudge he had with Buddha Bodhi and shouted, follow this old man to another place to take a look. Yes. Buddha Bodhi responded and flew in the direction of the flood. Another dozen days passed. Xiao Hua brought his clones to many places. Without exception, all of these places were flooded by the innate heavy water. Moreover, without exception, no soul managed to escape. However, Xiao Hua couldn't be sure that the goal of this disaster was the souls of billions of creatures in the primitive continent. Because the chances of the primitive variant beasts being killed by the innate heavy water were too few. Xiao Hua couldn't watch as any creatures were killed by the innate heavy water in front of him for no reason. Therefore, although no souls appeared when the innate heavy water fell, it could also mean that the souls had returned to the 9 underworlds. Grandmaster, I'm afraid you're thinking too much. Green-robed Xiao Hua was somewhat disapproving. He looked at the flood and said, presumably, those souls have already entered the cycle of reincarnation. I think that it's normal that no souls appeared. Xiao Hua nodded faintly. Green-robed Taoist is right. I think so too. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Buddha Bodhi didn't argue and said, I hope this poor monk is thinking too much. Why hasn't Taoist Longmai returned yet? Xiao Hua didn't want to talk to Buddha Bodhi anymore and changed the topic. Green-robed Xiao Hua said with a smile, yes, could it be that this guy encountered another disaster? Could it be that we have to go to Chaotian Tower again? The primitive continent has already been covered by the flood. If there are no accidents, Chaotian Tower will no longer exist. Phoenix Body Xiao Hua replied with some melancholy. Taoist Longmai shouldn't have a problem. Bone-honed Xiao Hua said with a smile, now that it's raining heavily, other primitive variant beasts can't even hide. Who would find trouble with a 5-clawed true dragon? Let's go. We'll go in the direction of Taoist Longmai to welcome him. Xiao Hua leaped into the sky and said faintly, now that you have nothing to do, you might as well go back and rest. Immediately after, the group of clones returned to Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua flew in the direction pointed by Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua. Along the way, Xiao Hua paid attention again. From time to time, he would open his illusion breaker eye and pay attention to the matter of souls. Chapter 42-44. Nothing. Xiao Hua looked again and again but didn't find anything strange. He could only ask Longmai Xiao Hua in confusion. A mysterious expression appeared on Longmai Xiao Hua's face as he said with a smile, fellow Taoist, take a closer look. Is the sky collapsing? Of course it's collapsing. Xiao Hua answered without hesitation, that day when I saw the collapse of Tongtian Peak, I already looked. At this point, Xiao Hua was suddenly stunned. Just as Longmai Xiao Hua said, he looked at the sky again. After a while, his gaze landed on the pale sun again. Damn it, I was wrong. Xiao Hua looked at the sun and smiled bitterly. I always thought that the space above the primitive continent had collapsed. But if the space had collapsed, then the sun, naturally can't be seen. It must have been blocked by the collapsed space. But now, the sun can be seen clearly and there are no dark clouds. Presumably, it's not a real space collapse, but the activation of a kind of array. If one were to think deeper, perhaps there was an array formation above the entire primordial continent that even the Harkin and the heaven-devouring beast were unaware of. This array formation. Sigh, I understand now. This array formation was built from the top of the Heaven Ascension Peak. Then, with Tongtian Peak as the center, it covered the entire primitive continent. Inside the array, all the water element energy of heaven and earth above the primitive continent was absorbed by this array. This caused the primitive continent to have no water element energy of heaven and earth. And inside the array, the water element energy of heaven and earth was cast into the innate heavy water. And when Tongtian Peak collapsed, this array was also activated. The innate heavy water that had been gathered for millions of years poured into the primitive continent, causing a tragedy of annihilation. But, such a large array, such a large scale. Who created it? Xiaohua was really in disbelief. This idea was so big that it exceeded his imagination. He himself felt that it was unimaginable. Dragon God. Longmai Xiaohua answered without hesitation. Dragon God? Impossible? Xiaohua was dumbfounded. If Dragon God is still here, how can the heaven-swallowing beast not know? To tell you the truth, fellow Taoist, Dragon Vein Xiaohua explained, I had long sensed a trace of the Dragon Clan's aura in the heavenly heavy water. After sending the last batch of Beasts and Fortune Gate's disciples to the Shanhua continent, I did not immediately meet up with fellow Taoist. Instead, I went to the sky to investigate. As a result, just as fellow Taoist saw, I discovered a flaw in the formation. When I tried to break the formation by force, I was injured by the formation. I didn't dare to act rashly, so I hurried to report it to fellow Taoist. Good. Joy appeared on Xiaohua's face as he shouted, We'll go investigate now. Perhaps we can find a way to break the formation. Unfortunately, Dragon Vein Xiaohua shook his head slightly and said, Fellow Taoist, I have come to report and also to warn you. This array is definitely not something we can break. I just touched the outer layer and was injured by the formation. I don't think fellow Taoist has the ability to break this formation. So it's like that. Although Dragon Vein Xiaohua's words were like cold water poured over Xiaohua's head, Xiaohua was not particularly surprised. If it was really the Dragon God's formation, it would be a joke if he could break it. Then what should we do? Xiaohua was a little helpless. Dragon Vein Xiaohua smiled and said, We can't do it, but there's still Di-Ting and the heaven-devouring beast. Impossible. Xiaohua shook his head. If I'm not mistaken, that heaven-devouring beast is the Dragon God's spiritual beast. How could it help us break the Dragon God's formation? Fellow Taoist seems to have forgotten. Dragon Vein Xiaohua replied, The heaven-devouring beast was kept in the dark. It was also bait in the formation. That's right. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and nodded. Now that we know that the heaven-devouring beast is the Dragon God's spiritual beast and Di-Ting is Nanwu Methraya's spiritual beast, the two of them must have come here with the Dragon God and Nanwu Methraya. Although they didn't mention their master, it's very obvious that Nanwu Methraya has already reincarnated. Can the Dragon God still be alive? Even if he's alive, I'm afraid he doesn't have much magic power. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let Di-Ting and the heaven-devouring beast fight for the Pangu axe and cause a conflict to push down Tongtian Peak. He can settle this matter with one axe. There's no need to make it so troublesome. And he doesn't dare to summon the heaven-devouring beast because he's afraid that the heaven-devouring beast has ulterior motives. Moreover, only the god of the Dragon Clan could create so much connate heavy water. Alright, there's also that Pangu axe. It's the Dragon God's weapon, and only the Dragon God can place it on Tongtian Peak. But Dragon Vein Xiaohua spoke again. I kept thinking on the way back. The dragon chi in this connate heavy water is extremely weak. If not for the fact that I have the body of a dragon, I definitely wouldn't be able to detect it. However, when we arrived at the formation, the dragon chi there was slightly stronger. The heaven-devouring beast is the spiritual beast that follows the Dragon God. How could it not detect it? If it knew that this formation was set up by the Dragon God, even if it has resentment in its heart, it wouldn't dare to cooperate with us to break the formation, right? Xiaohua pinched his chin and nodded. That's right, you're right. The heaven-devouring beast definitely wouldn't dare to break the formation set up by the Dragon God, even if the Dragon God has already abandoned it. I have to think of a way. At this point, Xiaohua's eyes suddenly lit up, as if he thought of something. Then, he transmitted a few words to Dragon Vein Xiaohua. Dragon Vein Xiaohua beamed with joy and nodded repeatedly. That's right, that's right. If that's the case, that heaven-devouring beast will definitely be fooled. Let's do as fellow Taoist says. Then, Xiaohua and Dragon Vein Xiaohua discussed for a while. Only then did Dragon Vein Xiaohua enter Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua identified the direction and flew in the direction of Di-Ting and the heaven-devouring beast. At this time, the Eldritch continent was filled with rain and flood. It was impossible to identify any direction. However, it was also in this place that Xiao Hua was the best at identifying directions. He didn't spend much effort to find the two strange beasts lying in the air. The mountain where the two strange beasts were on had already disappeared. Xiao Hua didn't dare to use his divine sense to check whether the teleportation formation in the capital star formation was intact. He stood respectfully in the air, bowed and said, "Junior greets the two seniors." "What? You were filled with anger when you left. Why aren't you angry now?" The heaven-devouring beast still didn't forget to sow discord and asked with a smile. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Previously, Junior thought that the two seniors were cold-blooded. You had a lot of magical powers but didn't want to take care of the billions of creatures in the Eldritch continent. Junior even suspected that the two seniors had done something, so Junior was angry. However, in the past few months, Junior tried his best but couldn't save many Eldritch beasts. While feeling dejected, Junior thought that the two seniors were injured. Even if you took action, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to save many creatures, so Junior can understand the difficulties of the two seniors. We don't have the Kunlun mirror, so it's naturally impossible for us to save creatures as easily as you, so we simply helped you guard to prevent the enemy who made the sky collapse from appearing." The heaven-devouring beast nodded and said, "Previously, we didn't want to say it. Since you already understand, this old man will also explain it to you." "Indeed." When Xiao Hua heard the heaven-devouring beast mention the enemy, he was overjoyed and said, "While Junior was saving creatures along the way, I also found something strange. I know that the two seniors are also victims and are definitely not the ones who set the trap, so now I'm specially apologizing to the two seniors." With that, Xiao Hua bowed again. After he finished bowing, Di Ting asked curiously, "What did you find?" "I haven't found anything special after looking for so long." "Souls," Xiao Hua said seriously. "I don't know if Senior noticed the souls of those eldritch beasts after they were killed." "No." Di Ting was confused and shook his head slightly. "Ordinary souls should leave the body for a few breaths after leaving the body, and then they will be pulled into the 9 underworlds by the power of samsara," Xiao Hua explained in all seriousness. However, this Junior discovered that in this flood, the souls of all the primeval beasts that were killed never left their bodies. "What does this mean? What does it mean?" Di Ting and the heaven-devouring beast were both surprised and asked naturally. "It means that there are devils on the Eldritch continent. It's at least a devil venerable." Xiao Hua's face tightened and said, "This devil venerable used this apocalyptic flood to collect souls." "Impossible." Di Ting denied. "If there was a devil venerable, how could I not know?" "Senior, please look over there." Xiao Hua pointed at the sun in the sky and asked, "Senior, did you find anything unusual?" Even Xiao Hua couldn't see the abnormality for a moment, so Di Ting naturally couldn't see it. So Xiao Hua told him the result of his discussion with Dragon Vein Xiao Hua. Finally, looking at the heaven-devouring beast's uncertain expression and flickering eyes, he asserted, "I hope Senior Heaven-Devouring can investigate clearly. It must be that devil venerable of the devil race who occupied the Dragon God's divine bone and borrowed the Dragon God's power to build Tongtian Peak on the Eldritch continent and set up the boundless dragon array." "Shut up." Just as Dragon Vein Xiao Hua said, without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish his conclusion, the heaven-devouring beast interrupted Xiao Hua. "How can there be such a devil race? How can they occupy the dragon bone of my dragon god? How is it impossible?" Xiao Hua said with deep emotion, "Previously, Junior saw a devil emperor of the zombie race in a cultivation world called the Ruins. He could occupy a celestial zombie. A devil emperor is so powerful, then a devil venerable should be able to occupy the dragon bone of the dragon god, right? Damn it, damn it, damn it." Hearing that the dragon god's dragon bone was desecrated, the heaven-devouring beast shouted in anger, but Di Ting still didn't believe it. He frowned and said, "If there really is a devil venerable, it's possible. But the problem is, Senior has never heard of a devil race on the Eldritch continent." Chapter 42-45. This, Junior doesn't know. Junior came late and doesn't know much about the great desolate continent. Xiao Hua shrugged. Of course, if the devil race's devil lord had already existed before the two seniors arrived, then the two seniors might not have noticed it. That's even more impossible. Di Ting shook his head even more. "My Buddha lord." At this point, Di Ting didn't say anything more, but Xiaohua also understood that even the demon venerable couldn't hide in front of Namo Maitreya Buddha. However, Xiaohua really didn't know what was above the demon venerable, so he didn't dare to say anything. He could only stammer, "If that's the case, the missing soul. How do you explain it?" "Humph." Heaven-swallowing beast snorted. "No need to say so much. Little guy, follow me to the array and you will know. Di Ting, are you going?" Hearing this, Xiaohua was overjoyed. Junior naturally wants to go. Junior also wants to see the face of Dragon God. "Oh, maybe I can also see the face of Namo Maitreya Buddha." When Xiaohua said this, Di Ting's heart thumped. How could he be at ease to let Xiaohua look for the corpse of Jianghu's previous life? Di Ting hurriedly replied, "Of course I want to go. This demon venerable dared to scheme against me. I want to let him know my power." Immediately, the two strange beasts brought Xiaohua to the location of Tongtian Peak. At this time, the surroundings of Tongtian Peak were flooded. Except for the collapsed peak of Tongtian Peak, which had not been corroded by the innate heavy water, the other mountains and boulders were also slowly melting. If Junior's guess is right, Xiaohua pointed to the place where Tongtian Peak pierced the sky and said, "This is the array core of the entire array. Dragon Gods. God's bone might be here and is being controlled by the demon venerable." "Damn it!" Heaven-swallowing beast roared, and its figure flashed in the heavy water and disappeared into the sky. "Senior." Xiaohua pretended to raise his hand and shouted, "Why didn't you bring Junior along?" "Hee, of course I won't forget you." Next to him, Truth Listener smiled sinisterly. Xiaohua's body became light, and the water in front of his eyes became colorful. When all the phenomena disappeared, Xiaohua opened his eyes and saw that he was standing under a collapsed space with Truth Listener. At this moment, the heaven-swallowing beast stood above his head in an extremely irritable manner. Its entire body expanded and shrunk uncontrollably. Its pitch-black demonic aura mixed with dragon tattoos enveloped an area of nearly 100 miles. Xiaohua squinted his eyes and released his divine sense. Hundreds of miles above his head, thousands of miles around him was filled with chaos. Within this chaos, there was a blue waterlight. The innate heavy water was pouring down from this waterlight. It was endless and didn't look like it was going to stop at all. Between the waterlight, there was a void fluctuation wantonly. It was no different from an ordinary void being torn apart. In these fluctuations, there was even an extremely large amount of heaven and earth yuan qi gushing out. Looking 1,000 miles away, there were pieces of space fragments and cracks in space. They were like broken terraces on a mountain peak. It looked like there were segments, but in reality, there was no pattern. Among these fragments, there was also a huge amount of innate heavy water pouring down. As the innate heavy water poured down, the originally connected space fragments shattered one after another and fell into the void. First, the heaven and earth yuan qi and disorderly fluctuations gushed out from the broken fragments, followed by another wave of innate heavy water. "Damn it! Isn't this the collapse of the void?" Xiaohua, who already had a good understanding of the void, looked at everything in front of him in disbelief. He then looked into the distance again. The scorching sun had already set in the west, and the faint rays of sunlight reflected 7 colors in the water light. If it wasn't for this sun, I would have been deceived by this great array. "That's right." The heaven-devouring beast's voice transmitted word by word. "There's clearly the aura of the dragon god here, and this aura is somewhat sluggish. There's no vitality. It must be the demon lord of the demon race who has taken over my dragon god's dragon bones. How hateful." But Di Ting first flew 100 miles away from the center for a while, then flew a few thousand miles away. At this time, he flew back and transmitted his voice. "I didn't smell a trace of the demon race's aura." How could Xiaohua let the heaven-devouring beast doubt him again? He hurriedly covered up. The zombie race is the best at hiding their aura. How could it be so easily discovered? Moreover, the dragon god's aura is incomparably strong. I'm afraid it has already concealed the aura of the demon race. "That's right." The heaven-devouring beast nodded resolutely. He looked at Di Ting and said, "The little guy is right. The dragon god's dragon bones must have been desecrated by the demon race. Di Ting, in order to not shame the dragon god's dragon bones, I'll put aside my grudges with you first. I'll break this demonic array first, and after I rescue the dragon god's dragon bones, I'll settle the score with you. How about that?" Di Ting hesitated for a moment, then said, "The dragon god is also a dragon that I respect. How about this? I'll break the array with you. Perhaps there'll be the remains of my Buddha Lord inside." "Good." Before Di Ting could finish, the heaven-devouring beast shouted happily, "Let's do it together. Damn it, just thinking about being able to see the dragon god's dragon bones before I die. My heart is also beating fast. Ai, what a pity. If only the Panguax was here again, it would save us a lot of trouble." Di Ting sighed and glanced at Xiao Hua. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua was not moved at all. His face was as heavy as water, even heavier than the surrounding Xiantian heavy water. "Do it." The heaven-devouring beast was a little anxious, but it didn't say anything. It transmitted its voice and immediately opened its mouth. Layers of ripples appeared in its black mouth, and the space in front of the heaven-devouring beast began to boil. This boiling was like a huge horn that spread to the sky. Wherever the boiling passed, everything disappeared, including the Xiantian heavy water and the shattered void. It was as if everything had been swallowed into the heaven-devouring beast's stomach. "I'll help you." Seeing the heaven-devouring beast take action, Di Ting roared, and the dim Buddhist light around its body shone brightly. The horn on its head emitted a 9-colored light, and the light coordinated with the heaven-devouring beast's fluctuations. It also rushed to the place thousands of miles high in the sky with the same power as the fluctuations. Wherever the light touched, everything was shattered, turning into wisps of Buddhist clouds. The fragments and cracks in the void were also shattered by the sound of the wooden fish, and no more Xiantian heavy water fell. "Ai, I'm afraid it won't work." Xiao Hua stood not far away, watching the two beasts do their best to break the array. He could not help but shake his head. These two beasts are already at the point of exhaustion. This joint attack is much weaker than the previous battle at the sky-connecting peak. Although the two beasts were exhausted, the power of their attacks was extremely powerful. When the heaven-devouring beast's fluctuations landed on the 1,000-mile array, thousands of dragon patterns suddenly appeared, covering half of the array. The entire array was extremely distorted, and thousands of chaotic fluctuations leaked out. When Di Ting's light landed on the other half of the array, thousands of Buddhist Dharma protectors were also born. These Buddhist Dharma protectors carried enormous strength, and each of them used the power of dragons and elephants, which also messed up the light and shadows of the array. Woo! A strange sound rang out, and the space thousands of miles was pulled down thousands of feet by the two beasts. The moment the array was torn apart, several strands of golden light leaked out. As expected. Seeing the light, Xiao Hua finally calmed down. This must be the sunlight above the array. Fellow Taoist Longmai's guess was right. There's a normal sky above the array. Gotcha! At the same time the light leaked out, a huge dragon-shaped thunderbolt fell out of the sky. This thunderbolt was golden in color, and it was filled with a terrifying dragon's breath. As soon as it fell, it immediately enveloped thousands of miles. In the face of this dragon's breath, the heaven-devouring beast was dumbfounded. He almost cried out, "Supreme Dragon God, you!" In the face of the Supreme Dragon God's remaining power, the heaven-devouring beast naturally did not dare to resist, but Di Ting did not dare to do so. Di Ting's figure flashed, and he swept the heaven-devouring beast away and flew away, still transmitting a voice transmission, "Hurry up and leave." Although the two beasts saw the opportunity early, and their strength was also extraordinary, this space of thousands of miles had already been sealed. How could they escape unscathed? Swoosh! The thunderbolt swept down, and the two beasts' bodies trembled. The heaven-devouring beast's demonic aura was completely destroyed, and the Buddhist light around Di Ting's body was also withdrawn. Even the wails of the two beasts were left in the air. However, even so, the two beasts still managed to escape from the space sealed by the dragon's breath before the thunderbolt fell. Damn it! Seeing the two beasts disappear in an instant, Xiao Hua angrily cursed, and his figure hurriedly teleported. However, his strength was too weak compared to the two beasts, and under the terrifying dragon's breath, how could he teleport? Seeing the dragon-shaped thunderbolt fall, Xiao Hua trembled with fear, and he hurriedly activated the lightning escape technique. Crack! The thunderbolt fell, and it hit Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua originally could not break through the seal of the thunderbolt, but when the thunderbolt fell, Xiao Hua borrowed the power of the thunderbolt to fly out of the seal. However, after flying for a few miles, Xiaohua's body fell down like a stone. It was unknown how long he fell. Poof! Xiaohua's body crashed into the broken peak of Heaven Connecting Peak, and the mountain rocks that had been corroded by the innate heavy water smashed a huge deep hole. Xiaohua's body was embedded in the deep hole. At this time, the magic array that was pulled by the two beasts had already returned to its original state, and an endless amount of innate heavy water fell from within. What was different from before was that within the 1,000 miles of the magic array, the huge eye from before faintly appeared again. It looked at Xiaohua's body that was embedded in the mountain rocks with extreme coldness, and then slowly disappeared. However, what the huge eye did not know was that when the huge eye disappeared, the slightly opened illusion breaker eye between Xiaohua's brows flashed with a trace of green light, and then it tightly closed again. Chapter 42-46. Dozens of days later, 2 strands of Yuan Shen swept across the sky from afar. Although these strands of Yuan Shen were powerful, they were sneaky like thieves sneaking into someone else's house. When the strands of Yuan Shen landed on the mountain peak where Xiaohua was located, they saw the innate heavy water accumulated in the deep hole and immediately stopped. They circled around a few times before quietly withdrawing. After about the time it took to eat a meal, Di Ting and the heaven-swallowing beast lowered their bodies and slowly flew along the surface of the flood. Every time they flew a certain distance, they would raise their heads to look at the sky. They didn't dare to release their Yuan Shin, let alone use other divine abilities. The two beasts flew close to the broken peak, but they didn't rescue Xiaohua from the deep hole first. Instead, they raised their heads in fear, as if they were afraid of waking up the dragon god in the sky. Huff! Just as they raised their heads, a stream of heavy water suddenly emerged from the human-shaped deep hole, and Xiaohua's figure flew out from it. Woo! The two beasts were like birds startled by the twang of a bow and hurriedly flew away. When they discovered the truth, they couldn't help but feel ashamed and angry. Little thing, what are you doing? Seniors. Xiaohua's tone was a little straight, and there was no emotion in his tone. His opened eyes were faintly glowing with green light. This junior has just woken up. If there is any disturbance, please forgive me. Hee hee. The heaven-swallowing beast smacked its lips. You really are an unkillable cockroach. Even the dragon god's wrath couldn't destroy you. Your human fleshly body is really not bad. It's a pity that our Yuan Shen is too powerful. Di Ting also felt a little regretful. Moreover, it's not compatible with the human body. Otherwise, we would also covet your body. Seniors, what do you mean? Xiaohua was quite puzzled and asked curiously. Di Ting and the heaven-swallowing beast looked at each other, somewhat surprised by Xiaohua's dullness. However, Di Ting immediately said, "We are just saying that we have no ill intentions. Moreover, we have been thinking about the dragon god's wrath. Our opinions are somewhat different, so we want to hear your opinion." I see. Xiaohua pondered for a moment before raising his head to look at the sky. He cautiously said, "It's not convenient to talk about this matter here. How about this? This junior has yet to recover from his serious injuries. Seniors, please wait for another 10 days. Once this junior has recovered from his injuries, we will discuss this matter again. How about that?" Will your injuries recover in less than 10 days? Truth Listener and the heaven-devouring beast asked in alarm. Xiaohua nodded. Junior is a human. I have specially refined medicinal pills and also have a healing cultivation technique. Although I won't be able to fully recover in a dozen or so days, I can still move freely. Speaking up to here, Xiaohua thought of something and hurriedly asked, "Seniors, do you need medicinal pills?" This junior doesn't know if the pills of the human race can be used by the two seniors. Why don't you show it to me? The Hakan asked curiously. Xiaohua took out a spatial ring and took out some medicinal pills refined by the incense cult and handed them to the Harkan. The Harkan took them and looked at them for a moment before shaking his head. These medicinal pills are too weak. Moreover, they are targeted at the human race. I'm afraid they won't be of much use to us. You. The heaven-devouring beast raised its head, and a suction force that even the Harkan found difficult to resist appeared. It forcibly sucked the pills into its residence, and it muttered, "Who cares? It's better than nothing." Yes. Xiao Hua said as he took out some more pills from his spatial ring and handed them to the heaven-devouring beast. This junior doesn't have many medicinal pills. Please enjoy these. The heaven-devouring beast opened its mouth and sucked in the pills again. However, a moment later, a strange expression appeared on its face. The Harken looked at the heaven-devouring beast meaningfully and asked with a smile, "How is it?" "Bullshit." The heaven-devouring beast spat out a mouthful of pills and cursed, "After eating so much, it's still not enough to fill the gaps between my teeth." "Like I said." The Harken laughed. "These are medicinal pills of the human race. It's not something that can be consumed by us." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "This junior wants to recuperate here first." "Recuperate here? You don't want to live anymore?" The heaven-devouring beast looked up with some fear. "Right under the nose of venerable dragon god?" "My human race has a saying, the safest place is also the most dangerous place." Xiao Hua replied. "Bullshit." The Harken also cursed. "That saying is, the most dangerous place is also the safest place." Yes, this junior hasn't read many books and can't compare to the profound knowledge of the two seniors." Xiao Hua said as he sat down cross-legged and swallowed one of the medicinal pills that he gave to the heaven-devouring beast. He began to circulate his cultivation method and began to heal his wounds. The wisps of 5 elements origin energy fell into Xiao Hua's body and then overflowed from his forehead, turning into a faint 5-colored cloud. Damn it, the human race is the human race. The heaven-devouring beast enviously looked at Xiao Hua as he healed his wounds. This brain of his really isn't for nothing. Even his healing method is extraordinary. "Let's go." The Harken understood Xiao Hua's meaning and said with a smile, "His cultivation method being extraordinary is secondary, the key is his brain. This little guy has already ordered us to leave. Let's wait until he recovers." The heaven-devouring beast looked at Xiao Hua as he healed his wounds. He basically didn't take the Harken and the Harken seriously. Although it was a bit angry, it also knew that it needed his help and couldn't do anything to Xiao Hua. Therefore, it coldly snorted and turned around to follow the Harken and flew away. After the two beasts left, Xiao Hua took out his spatial ring. But when he took out a pill from his spatial ring, Xiao Hua's hand moved and the pill refined by Xiao Gua appeared in his hand. After Xiao Hua swallowed the pill, he said to himself, "It seems, my humanity has grown a lot." At this time, the one occupying Xiao Hua's body was naturally the soul cultivator Xiao Hua. The wrath of the dragon god from the mouth of the heaven-devouring beast wasn't a small spell. All the soul cultivators in Xiao Hua's body were knocked unconscious. Only the soul cultivator Xiao Hua, who had been hiding in the spatial ring, managed to escape. At this time, he was controlling Xiao Hua's body and successfully deceived the Harken and the heaven-devouring beast. After another 10 days, Xiao Hua opened his eyes. After the starlight slowly passed, his eyes were filled with benevolence. An indescribable divine light flashed from his pupils, and then they returned to normal. Not bad. Xiao Hua, who had regained his consciousness, looked around. He already knew that the soul cultivator Xiao Hua had used a Taoist cultivation method and a Confucian cultivation method to heal his wounds. In these 10 days, most of his injuries had healed. He couldn't help but praise. Fellow Taoist is indeed worthy of being a shaman who controlled the ninth sky of spirit origin. I admire you. Hee hee. The soul cultivator Xiao Hua smiled proudly and said, "I don't dare." As the saying goes, if you learn one method, you can learn 10,000 methods. When you cultivate to the end, there are signs of 10,000 methods returning to the same origin. Moreover, fellow Taoist used the lightning escape technique to avoid the wrath of the dragon god, which has the effect of borrowing force to fight force. The injuries you suffered may seem serious, but in fact, they are nothing. Oh, also, fellow Taoist, when you were unconscious, I noticed a huge eye above the formation in the sky. Oh, an eye. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. His eyes turned sharply as he asked curiously, could it be that the spying Lu Yi detected earlier was not Di Ting? Was there really a dragon god spying on us? It wasn't just the dragon god spying on us, of course. Di Ting was spying on us too. Xiao Hua replied, Di Ting is very familiar with our actions. If he didn't spy on us, I would be the first to not believe it. However, didn't Lu Yi say it clearly at that time? The spying he sensed was a kind of extermination. It was a kind of crisis. This spying was definitely done by the dragon god. Looking at this world-ending crisis, if the Fortune Gates disciples weren't on Shenhua continent, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to survive. And Xiaohua closed his eyes again. After pondering for a moment, he said, "It seems like we've been monitored since the moment we entered the desolate continent. Moreover, the heavenly heavy water might not necessarily take Lu Yi's and the others' lives. If Lu Yi's feeling is right, the dragon god must have other powerful means. This formation, we must break it." "Of course we must break it." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Grandmaster Bodhi's water bottle is already filled with heavenly heavy water. Even an ocean on Shenhua continent is now filled with heavenly heavy water. However, this is only a temporary solution. If we don't break the formation, the desolate continent will face the end of the world. Moreover, if we don't take advantage of the fact that the dragon god can't escape from the formation and kill him as soon as possible, how will we survive when he can move? Let's go. Xiaohua no longer dared to hesitate. He leaped up and said, "We need to find Di Ting and the heaven-devouring beast. If we want to break the formation, we need to rely on their abilities." There was no need for Xiaohua to spend too much effort searching for them. Xiaohua had only flown for half a day when Di Ting's origin sense swept over. Soon after, Di Ting rushed over with the heaven-devouring beast. Behind Di Ting, the heaven-devouring beast stood respectfully. Looking at the heaven-devouring beast's sleepy face, Xiaohua understood that this lazy beast wanted to rely on Di Ting to escape this calamity. "Little guy, have your injuries healed?" Di Ting looked at Xiaohua from head to toe and asked curiously. Xiaohua was still a little guy in his mouth. He had never asked for Xiaohua's name, as if he looked down on Xiaohua. Perhaps it was just like what Di Ting said. Demonic beasts didn't need a name. "Many thanks for Senior's concern." Xiaohua bowed and said, "Junior's injuries have not healed, but since Senior has summoned me, Junior does not dare to keep Senior waiting." "Little guy," the heaven-devouring beast hurriedly said, "you're right about the formation in the sky. This old man has already seen it. However, the wrath of the dragon god in the formation is indeed the real deal. There is no demonic aura at all. How could my dragon god be desecrated by the demon lord?" "What do you think, Senior?" Xiaohua didn't answer. Instead, he turned to look at Di Ting. To be honest, Di Ting didn't hide it and replied, "This old man also didn't hear any demonic aura from the formation. However, this old man keeps feeling that something is wrong." Chapter 42-47. Hearing this, the corner of Xiaohua's mouth curled up. Without waiting for Di Ting to finish, he continued, "Senior, do you think that the dragon god in the formation is too unreasonable? He shouldn't have killed the heaven-swallowing beast? Do you think that with the dragon god's identity, he wouldn't attack the two seniors? Do you think that venerable dragon god won't kill them?" That's right, that's right." Xiaohua's "that's right" immediately hit Di Ting's heart. Di Ting nodded repeatedly. That's right, that's right. The heaven-devouring beast has been following Supreme Dragon God for who knows how many years. He's loyal and devoted. Even after Supreme Dragon God disappeared, he's still guarding Supreme Dragon God and fighting with me for the sake of his faith in the Eldritch continent. Sigh, that's right. Hearing this, the heaven-swallowing beast's face was also extremely lonely. He sighed. "When I saw the Dragon God's wrath descend, I really didn't want to live anymore. How could the Dragon God treat me like this? That's why." Xiaohua struck while the iron was hot. The dragon god in the formation is definitely not the dragon god, but a puppet whose dragon bones are occupied by the demon lord. However, the demon lord's concealment technique is too powerful. He could actually deceive the two seniors. Perhaps this is the only explanation that can make me feel at ease. The heaven-swallowing beast was obviously moved by Xiaohua's words. He looked at the distant sky and said faintly, "Senior, if the dragon god's dragon bones or dragon body were desecrated by the demon lord, what would you do?" Xiaohua's eyes narrowed like crescent moons as he asked softly. "Nonsense. Of course, I'll kill the demon lord. I definitely won't allow anything to desecrate the dragon god," the heaven-swallowing beast said fiercely. He even looked at Xiaohua with a fierce gaze. Xiaohua didn't care about the heaven-swallowing beast's threat. He turned to Di Ting and asked, "Senior, what do you think we should do?" Di Ting was a little hesitant and replied, "Of course, we should break the formation. Kill the demon lord and rescue the dragon god's dragon bones from the formation. It's just that this formation is too powerful. We have no way of breaking it." Hee hee. Xiaohua smiled and pointed at the distant sky. The center of the formation is naturally the formation I. The defense there is naturally the strongest. What about the edge of the array? This junior doesn't believe that the great formation that covers the entire primeval wasteland continent is perfectly round and flawless. If the demon lord really used Lord Dragon God's divine ability to lay out a formation that covers the entire eldritch continent, I'm afraid there really isn't any flaw in it. The heaven-swallowing beast looked at Xiaohua with disdain and said, "This daddy once saw venerable dragon god set up a dragon array that covered the entire starfield." Boom! The heaven-swallowing beast's words made Xiaohua dizzy all of a sudden. Only now did Xiaohua realize how shallow he was. The so-called supreme dragon god is the god of the dragon race. Even when his spirit beast was heavily injured and on the verge of death, he couldn't resist it. How could his divine ability be measured by him? For a dragon god who could set up a dragon formation that could control an entire space zone, even if he couldn't move and didn't have much power left, the great formation he set up could definitely cover the entire primeval continent. It was definitely not something that he and two dying beasts could break, right? The heaven-devouring beast's words continued to enter Xiaohua's mind. However, Xiaohua did not hear a single word. Now, he seemed to have fallen into another deadlock. Could it be that the distortion in the starry sky is the key to breaking the great formation? Xiaohua was absent-minded. His eyes rolled around as he thought to himself, "Only at that time will this Xiao have a chance to escape?" Of course, this daddy is very familiar with the dragon formation set up by venerable dragon god. The heaven-devouring beast's words entered Xiaohua's mind intermittently. Venerable dragon god often tells this daddy that breaking a formation requires a finishing touch, to find the key to the formation, to understand the thoughts of the person who set up the formation. Alas! Xiaohua sighed. He sneered and cursed in his heart. These words are for beasts. Our human race cultivators already knew this when we first started learning about formations. If this daddy knew the weakness of this dragon formation, would this daddy still need to waste time with you? Xiaohua did not listen to the heaven-devouring beast's show-off. He raised his head to look at the blue and gray sky and thought, this dragon formation covers the entire primeval continent. Even if we reach the edge of the great formation, it's impossible to get out. It's really difficult to break the formation from the inside. But what about outside the great formation? Could it be possible? But how can this daddy get out of the great formation? Since this daddy got out of the great formation, this great formation, is it not already broken? Damn it, this is a dead knot. Back then, this dragon god spent a lot of effort to set up the formation. He actually used hundreds of millions of stone giants. Damn it. Hundreds of millions of stone giants to build such a Tongtian peak. That's why he could reach the peak of Tongtian Peak and start setting up the formation. This damn dragon god. At that time, he couldn't even fly. How could he dare to look for the heaven-devouring beast? If the heaven-devouring beast was not obedient and directly swallowed the dragon god, he wouldn't even have a place to cry out. It's probably because of the suspicion at that time that made the dragon god attack the heaven-devouring beast today. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's heart suddenly flashed with a faintly discernible thought. However, this thought flashed by like a fish. Ayo! Xiaohua's heart moved. He hurriedly turned his head and looked around again. He almost lost his voice. Junior seems to have some feeling. What feeling? The heaven-devouring beast's words were interrupted by Xiaohua. It was somewhat unhappy and asked coldly, "Could it be the feeling of breaking the formation?" Humph, with the strength of your human race, you actually want to break the dragon formation? Don't you think it's a little wishful thinking? Xiaohua's words were indeed somewhat arrogant. Not only did Di Ting look at him in disbelief, even the sleepy heaven-devouring beast also became alert and looked at Xiaohua. That's right. Xiaohua nodded with certainty. Junior thought of an idea related to breaking the formation. What idea? Di Ting and the heaven-devouring beast also became alert as they stared at Xiaohua and asked. Xiaohua shrugged and said with a smile, "Unfortunately, this idea flashed by. Junior hasn't grasped this idea yet." Damn it! The heaven-devouring beast was somewhat flustered and exasperated. That kind of nostalgic memory was cut off and he got such an answer. How could he not be furious? Di Ting smiled and said, don't worry, slowly think, we have plenty of time." Speaking until here, Di Ting didn't forget to remind, the ones who don't have time are the creatures of the ancient continent. Now that the flood has covered the continent for a long time, it probably won't be long before the entire ground can't bear the weight of the innate heavy water. That's right. Xiao Hua's heart trembled. He didn't think of this, so he frowned and stared at the sky, thinking hard. What exactly is it? What did I think of just now? Great formation? Should it be broken from the outside? But how can I get out of here? Dragon God spent billions of stone giants to build Tongtian Peak? This Tongtian Peak is the eye of the Great Formation? Can only break the formation from Tongtian Peak? But how can I get out from the eye of the formation on Tongtian Peak? Tongtian Peak, Tongtian Peak. Damn it. I'm afraid this is the only mountain in the ancient continent that can reach the sky, right? Xiao Hua's thoughts were somewhat random. His gaze fell on the distant sky. He couldn't see clearly where Tongtian Peak pierced into the sky. It seems that the hidden Immortal continent also doesn't have such a mountain. Io, that's right. Xiaoyu continent's Meng country's Taiqing sect doesn't have 3 mountain peaks: heaven, earth, and human? These 3 mountain peaks are also known as Tongtian Peak. Yes. Thinking of heaven, earth, and human, Xiaohua immediately thought of Hanzhu, the Kunlun sect's disciple who almost killed him in the Buddhist sect's ruins. Before Xiaohua went to the Buddhist sect's ruins, he saw Hanzhu outside the ink-cloud black forest. At that time, Hanzhu was participating in a Kunlun sect's grand meeting, and he just happened to win one of the competitions. And this competition was to climb the heaven, earth, and human, the 3 mountain peaks that could reach the sky. Whoever could climb the highest would win. And because Hanzhu had Buddhist sect's cultivation method, he actually climbed to the peak of the mountain. But when he reached the peak, Hanzhu discovered that he wasn't in the sky, but emerged from the underground of the ink-cloud black forest. At that time, Hanzhu proudly told Xiaohua about this. Xiaohua was also quite puzzled at that time. He even thought that Hanzhu was joking. As for later, Hanzhu suddenly attacked and almost killed Xiaohua. Xiaohua threw this matter to the back of his mind. Now that he saw Tongtian Peak's vastness and Tongtian Peak, Xiaohua very naturally thought of this matter. He thought of heaven, earth, and human. Aren't heaven, earth, and human very similar to Tongtian Peak? Needless to say. Xiaohua's heart suddenly became lively, he thought to himself. Although I don't know if Xiaoyu continent is like this great desolate continent, there is a huge formation enveloping it. But if Tongtian Peak is like heaven, earth, and human, then this Tongtian Peak is not the real Tongtian Peak. Instead, there is a formation that gives rise to an illusion of Tongtian Peak. The end of Tongtian Peak is the beginning of Tongtian Peak. In other words, the peak of Tongtian Peak is actually at the bottom of Tongtian Peak. That supreme dragon god who can't fly also doesn't need to climb to the top of Tongtian Peak. As long as Tongtian Peak is built, he will be at the top of Tongtian Peak. The more Xiaohua thought about it, the more reasonable it was, his face unconsciously glowing. Taoist. The nearby heaven-devouring beast looked amused and laughed. Did you think of something delicious? What delicious? Xiaohua glared at the heaven-devouring beast and said, I thought of a trick to break the formation. Impossible? The heaven-devouring beast cried out in disbelief. You actually thought of a trick? Speak quickly. Di Ting hit the nail on the head. How should we break the formation? It's at the bottom of Tongtian Peak. Xiaohua said with confidence. That's the top of Tongtian Peak. How is that possible? Are you dreaming? Di Ting sneered. That Tongtian Peak was already pushed down by me. Why didn't the top of the peak appear? Chapter 42-48. As the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. Xiaohua said with a smile, the Tongtian Peak has been toppled by Senior, but the mountain at the bottom is still there. Who would have thought that the broken mountain is the foundation of breaking the array? One is in the sky, the other is underground. The human race has too many unimaginable ideas. The heaven-swallowing beast disagreed and looked at Xiaohua coldly. I don't think this is a good idea. Seniors, why don't you go and take a look? Xiaohua said with a smile. If Senior wants the dignity of the dragon god to be trampled under the feet of the demon race, you should go and take a look. But when the heaven-swallowing beast heard that the dragon bones of the dragon god might be under their feet, he couldn't help but shrink back. We are about to die anyway. Di Ting said faintly. No matter what, you have to make things clear, right? Is the dignity of your Lord Dragon God not worth your life? See. There was no need for Di Ting to say a second sentence. Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air in his heart. He had heard a kind of determination from Di Ting's mouth and also heard a kind of threat to himself. The heaven-swallowing beast nodded and replied, Di Ting, you are right. Even if the person in this array is really the dragon god, I still have to go and see him. See him for the last time. Let's go. Di Ting took the lead and flew in the direction of the Tongtian Peak. Behind him, the heaven-swallowing beast, Xiaohua, and the heaven-swallowing beast followed. When they reached the Tongtian Peak, Di Ting's ears trembled slightly. His figure flew slowly for nearly 1,000 miles and finally landed on the broken peak of the Tongtian Peak. He said faintly to Xiaohua, Little guy, the array core you mentioned doesn't seem to be here. How is that possible? Xiaohua was a little confused. He almost shouted out without thinking. Di Ting smiled coldly and said, Can you not believe what I say? If you don't believe me, you can take a look yourself. I have searched the 6 realms and still have this little bit of divine ability. Of course, Xiaohua didn't dare to say that he didn't believe it. However, he was still unwilling to give up and rushed into the ground of the Tongtian Peak to take a look. The base of the heaven-connecting peak was a foundation that was several thousand li in size. This foundation was covered in a dark purple color, and there were also faint fluctuations coming from the foundation. However, under Xiaohua's divine sense, he couldn't see any signs of other great arrays. Even when Xiaohua fled to the very bottom of the mountain, he still didn't see the promised array formation. Most importantly, the water element yuan qi of heaven and earth was still lacking, and there were no signs of overflowing connate heavy water. The surface of Tongtian Peak and even the bottom of the ground were covered in a strange purplish color. Although it was already broken, it was unknown what material it was made of. Xiaohua was unable to escape. Xiaohua once again flew out from the ground and entered the Tongtian Peak using earth escape from the place where he was cut off by Panga's axe. Finally, he arrived at the bottom of Tongtian Peak. The entire heaven-connecting peak was like a huge cylindrical space. There were strange restrictive spells on the outside, and the inside was simply refined materials. How strange. Xiaohua looked to his left and saw that there really weren't any signs of a spell formation. Then, he opened his Dharma eyes and carefully looked again. Finally, he flew out with heavy doubts in his heart. How is it? The heaven-devouring beast greeted him and asked with concern, Did Daoist discover anything strange? No. Xiaohua frowned and replied, There are no signs of a spell formation here, so there shouldn't be any array core. Daoist's idea is indeed interesting, but it might be a bit unimaginable. If Lord Dragon God were to set up a spell formation, he wouldn't be so childish. The heaven-devouring beast advised. Perhaps this old man's thinking is too simple. Xiaohua was somewhat depressed. His eyes turned slightly, and no one knew what he was thinking. The heaven-devouring beast laughed and said, Can the human race actually predict Lord Dragon God's thoughts? Little thing, you still have a long way to go in the future. Is the road long? Hee. Xiaohua suddenly laughed. He raised his head and asked the truth listener, Senior, even if the array core isn't here, this junior still believes that the array core is definitely on the land of this great desolate continent. Have you carefully checked the surroundings? Of course. Of course this daddy has checked. The truth listener was somewhat displeased. You dare to not believe this daddy? No. Xiaohua hurriedly smiled and said, It's not that this junior doesn't believe senior, but this junior feels that the array core shouldn't be far from here. If possible, I ask senior to look further. Actually, there's no need for that. The truth listener said, This daddy has already listened to everything within a million miles, and there isn't any abnormality at all. Xiao Hua's face instantly turned ugly. He thought for a moment and said earnestly, "This junior would like to ask senior to carefully check again." "All right." The truth listener was also straightforward. Without saying anything else, it flew up and really flew around again. When it turned back, it said, "Little thing, this daddy has looked again, and there really isn't. How is that possible?" Xiao Hua was somewhat puzzled. The array core must be on the Great Desolate Continent. How can it not be there? The Great Desolate Continent is so big. Even if there is an array core of 1,000 miles, where can we find it? The heaven-swallowing beast ridiculed. "This daddy thinks that this idea of yours is just wishful thinking." Alas! Xiao Hua sighed, looked at the sky, looked at the earth and muttered to himself, "Yes, from the 3 peaks of heaven, earth and human to the Ink Zhao Black Forest, from the Tongtian Peak to the Array Core. Naturally, it would be extremely far, possibly the entire Great Desolate Continent." At this point, Xiao Hua's eyes suddenly lit up, and he clapped his hands and laughed. "Ha ha, this Xiao knows, this Xiao knows." "Oh, what do you know?" The heaven-swallowing beast's eyes also lit up, and asked curiously. "This old man knows where the array core is." Xiao Hua's eyes lit up, revealing the power of life in the rain of innate heavy water. The heaven-swallowing beast was stunned, and hurriedly said, "You really know where it is? Say it quickly. Say it quickly." "Chaotian Tower." Xiao Hua pointed in the direction of Chaotian Tower and said confidently, "Chaotian Tower? Chaotian Tower?" Di Ting and the heaven-swallowing beast cried out involuntarily, looked at each other and said, "How is that possible? We have also been to Chaotian Tower's Buddhist pagoda. How come we have never sensed the aura of the dragon god inside? How come we have not found any traces of the dragon array?" Xiao Hua smiled and looked at the heaven-swallowing beast, and asked, "Heaven-swallowing beast, you have been to Chaotian Tower, right?" The heaven-swallowing beast's face was somewhat unnatural, and it replied awkwardly, "I have been there, but I did not dare to enter that Buddhist pagoda." "You cannot go in. If you go in, you will become the pagoda guardian spirit beast inside." Xiao Hua was in a good mood, and said with a smile, "However, even if you did not enter the Buddhist pagoda, you must have seen the symmetrical and inverted Buddhist pagoda inside, right?" "I have seen it." The heaven-swallowing beast nodded and replied, "At that time, I felt it was very strange. I did not know what use these 2 Buddhist pagoda have, or what kind of weapon they are." "You only know about weapons," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "That inverted Buddhist pagoda is probably the center of the entire array, the restriction that connects the peak and the bottom of Tongtian Peak. Or it could be said that it is the link between the sky and the earth of the Great Desolate Continent." "Not bad, not bad." The truth listener nodded with some joy. "Hearing you say that, this lousy thought about those 2 Buddhist pagoda opposing each other, and the feeling of going from one Buddhist pagoda world to another Buddhist pagoda world, it really is like that. The head of the human race. What is it made of?" The heaven-swallowing beast's voice was close to a whisper. "This lousy has entered Chaotian Tower countless times, but I have never thought of it like that." "Actually," Xiao Hua replied mysteriously, "the reason is very simple." "Hurry up and say it." The heaven-swallowing beast could not wait any longer, and asked, "How do you know?" Xiao Hua said neither quickly nor slowly. Actually, previously, when the truth listener and the heaven-swallowing beast worked together to tear apart the heavenly dome array, there was a flash of golden brilliance. At that time, this Xiao thought that it was the sunlight of the sun. But now that I think about it, the sun was about to set back then. The color should have been orange-red, not golden. Furthermore, this Xiao is very familiar with that golden color. Isn't it the yellow sand of Chaotian Tower? And at that moment, the sand of Chaotian Tower should have been submerged by the connate heavy water. The place where such sand can be found should be another inverted world in Chaotian Tower. Therefore, the top of Heaven Ascension Peak, which pierces the sky, is at the bottom of the inverted Buddhist pagoda in Chaotian Tower. Hiss! Not only did the heaven-swallowing beast gasp, but even the real heaven-swallowing beast and truth listener were dumbfounded. The shock in their hearts was self-evident. They had seen everything that Xiao Hua had said, but they had never thought in this direction. Although it was because Xiao Hua had previously experienced the 3 peaks of heaven, earth and man, if they could not string all these details together, how could they arrive at such a strange conclusion? Humans, humans. The heaven-swallowing beast only had this sentence left. Although they had not gone to Chaotian Tower to investigate, the heaven-swallowing beast almost believed Xiao Hua's words. Actually, a bitter expression appeared on the heaven-swallowing beast's face. Taoist, you said so much, but it was all conjecture after the fact. The primordial beasts who received the news of Heaven Ascension Peak had all gone to Chaotian Tower. It's not particularly difficult to link the two together. Hee, of course. Xiao Hua said with a smile. The heavenly demon thought that what he did was strange. The primordial beasts had already gone to Chaotian Tower. In the future, when they search for the array core, they will definitely exclude Chaotian Tower. However, his attempt to cover it up only makes it more conspicuous. To the point of revealing 300 taels of silver is really not worth mentioning in this Zhao's eyes. In fact, Xiao Hua had another reason that he did not mention. This was because he believed that this array was set up by the dragon god. Since the dragon god could not move casually, then if he wanted to leave a message, it would definitely be near the array core. Since all the primordial beasts had obtained the news of Heaven Ascension Peak from Chaotian Tower, then Chaotian Tower must be at the peak of Heaven Ascension Peak. Chapter 42-49. Let's go. Di Ting was a little anxious. It whispered and left with a heaven-devouring beast. The heaven-devouring beast seemed to be a little hesitant. It hesitated for half a cup of tea's time before it took Xiao Hua and flew towards the imperial palace. Xiao Hua closed his eyes and waited for the light to disappear. However, the heaven-devouring beast's voice sounded in his mind again. Little thing, let me ask you. Do you really think that this formation was set up by the demon lord using the remains of the dragon god? Are you really not lying to me? Xiao Hua's heart thumped. He knew that the heaven-devouring beast was already suspicious. However, he didn't have time to think too much. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and answered truthfully. Actually, this junior thinks that the possibility of the demon lord using the dragon bones of the dragon god is only 30%. Oh? Then what about 70%? The heaven-devouring beast's tone didn't fluctuate at all. It seemed that it had already expected Xiao Hua's words. Xiao Hua knew that he was right. However, he still said carefully, the other 70% is... This formation was set up by the dragon god himself. Xiao Hua then told the heaven-devouring beast his guess. Finally, he said, actually, this junior also knows that this formation can't be broken. This junior just wants to find a place to escape. Moreover, this junior also wants to see the dragon god and ask him why he wants to destroy the world. Moreover, why he wants to use senior as bait. After all, this junior doesn't believe that the dragon god is that kind of cold-hearted dragon god. Why does the dragon god want to destroy the world? He doesn't need any reason. The dragon god must have his own reasons. You're asking for nothing. The heaven-devouring beast sighed. This senior actually already knew that this formation must be set up by the dragon god. This senior just wants to see the dragon god and personally ask him why he didn't come to find me even though he knew that I was in the chaotic continent all these years. Why did you abandon me as bait without saying a word? Of course, if the dragon god wants me to be bait, he only needs to say it. How can I not listen to him? Sigh, that's right. This junior also feels that it's unfair for senior. Therefore, this junior wants to ask the dragon god while saving his own life. Xiao Hua also agreed. Moreover, if you can really see the dragon god, and if his highness still remembers our old friendship, I believe that senior won't throw your life away? Humph, you think that you're the smart one. The heaven-devouring beast snorted. This is also that bastard's idea. All right. Xiao Hua was also helpless. After all, although these two strange beasts weren't humans, they had lived for so long. What kind of deception hadn't they seen? He didn't have the dragon god's heart. Furthermore, from the looks of it, if Truth Listener were alive, Xiao Hua would have a chance of survival. If he were dead, he would definitely drag Xiao Hua down with him before he died. He wouldn't tolerate Buddha Subhuti occupying Nanwu Methreya Buddha's Buddha fruit. Moments later, the light in front of Xiao Hua slowly vanished. What appeared in front of him was a boundless flood. The heavenly imperial court was a plain to begin with. Now, the flood had submerged everything underwater. If not for Truth listeners' extreme familiarity with the area, it would have been difficult to find it. Is it here? Xiao Hua's divine sense swept out. He looked again and again, but he still couldn't confirm it. Heaven-devouring beast, do it. The Buddha ignored Xiao Hua and said to the heaven-devouring beast. The heaven-devouring beast nodded. It flew into the sky and opened its mouth slightly. A huge whirlpool immediately appeared above the innate heavy water. The whirlpool continued to expand. In just a few moments, it was 1,000 miles wide. At the bottom of the whirlpool, golden sand was exposed. What was strange was that the sand was not corroded by the innate heavy water, nor was it washed away. It was exactly the same as before. The heaven-devouring beast didn't hesitate at all. It opened its mouth again as if it had entered it countless times before. Woof! With a soft howl, spatial ripples like fishing nets appeared among the golden sand. These ripples didn't affect a single grain of sand. Then, a void passage appeared in front of Xiao Hua. The heaven-devouring beast looked at the passage cautiously. It turned to look at the Buddha. The Buddha looked puzzled. It didn't seem to find anything inside. I'll go in first. Xiao Hua knew that the two beasts were still puzzled. He said and entered the passage first. The passage wasn't short. It was different from the one Xiao Hua had entered previously. After entering the wave-like passage, there was a light at the end of the passage. When Xiao Hua flew out of the light, he saw the great derivation exquisite pagoda that pierced straight into the sky. Looking at the huge golden sand under the exquisite pagoda of great derivation and the huge pagoda above his head which was connected to this huge pagoda by its spire in another inverted space, Xiao Hua really couldn't associate this huge pagoda with the dragon god, nor could he associate this huge pagoda with the tragedy of the end of the world. Translator's thoughts Lu_Kaishian editor. Valvrave looking at the huge golden sand under the exquisite pagoda of great derivation, Xiao Hua really couldn't associate this huge pagoda with the dragon god, nor could he associate this huge pagoda with the catastrophe of the world. Seeing that the strange mirror had disappeared, Xiao Hua was about to take a closer look at the inverted space, which he suspected was the top of Heaven Ascension Peak, when there was a sound behind him. The heaven-devouring beast and the Buddha had arrived. Behind the heaven-devouring beast, the void passage slowly closed. Did you see anything? A complicated expression appeared on Truth Listener's face. His gaze landed on the pagoda as he asked Xiao Hua. This junior didn't see anything unusual. Xiao Hua replied thought-provokingly. However, this pagoda seems to have been here for many years. I wonder if Senior has seen anything? Of course I've come here more often than the heaven-devouring beast. The Buddha pagoda's face revealed endless loneliness, even more so than the heaven-devouring beasts. Moreover, in order to find some clues, I simply moved to the nearby area. But after so many years, I haven't found anything. Senior, what do you want to find? Xiao Hua suddenly asked. The Buddha pagoda had unconsciously been fooled and blurted out, "Nonsense, of course it's the trace of my Buddha Lord." However, as soon as the Buddha pagoda finished speaking, it immediately understood. It immediately shut up and glared fiercely at Xiao Hua. In fact, there was no need for the Buddha pagoda to say anything. Looking at the hostility between the Buddha pagoda and the heaven-devouring beast, and seeing that neither of them had news of their master, Xiao Hua had already guessed the ins and outs of the matter. Xiao Hua even knew more than the Buddha pagoda. After all, Jianghu had already escaped from the cycle of reincarnation. This meant that the Buddha Lord had already fallen, and the Buddha pagoda was still looking for traces of his Buddha Lord. However, what Xiao Hua didn't understand was why Nanwu Methreya Buddha and the Dragon God came here. Why did the two powerful beings start a war, causing Nanwu Methreya Buddha to fall into the cycle of reincarnation and the Dragon God to lose his divine ability and couldn't even move? What purpose did they have to use killing to achieve? Senior, do you think this pagoda was built by the Buddha Lord? Xiao Hua asked. Of course. The Buddha pagoda replied without hesitation. In this primitive continent, other than my Buddha Lord, who else can build such a merciful pagoda? After the Buddha pagoda finished speaking, the heaven-devouring beast's expression changed greatly, as if it had thought of something. The Buddha pagoda was shocked and hurriedly flew a distance away, once again on alert. Just as Xiao Hua had guessed, the Dragon God was in this great formation. If the Dragon God could move, with the divine ability of the Dragon God, It wouldn't have to waste much effort to destroy the world. The reason why the dragon god couldn't move was because it was suppressed by the pagoda. The Buddha pagoda. The heaven-devouring beast said faintly, "You don't have to be nervous. You and I are about to die. It's meaningless to worry about the other party attacking now." "Yes, that's right." The Buddha pagoda nodded slightly and replied, "No matter who you and I meet, it's our fortune. Perhaps we can all be saved. Let's go over and take a look." The heaven-devouring beast looked up at the top of the exquisite pagoda and said. At this moment, the exquisite pagoda was so similar to the heaven-connecting peak from before. Both of them pierced through heaven and earth, revealing a boundless aura. Xiaohua wouldn't believe that this pagoda had nothing to do with the heaven-connecting peak, even if he was beaten to death. "Wait a moment," the Buddha pagoda said. Di Ting knew what the heaven-devouring beast was talking about. As he said that, his figure moved closer to the exquisite pagoda with familiarity. As if he had done it countless times before, the Buddha light around his body flickered. Sure enough, the Buddha light turned into lotuses and fell around the pagoda along with the multicolored light, turning into a lotus seed pod path that led to the top of the pagoda. The Buddha pagoda didn't need the heaven-devouring beast to say anything. He landed on the path first and ran happily on all fours to the top of the pagoda. It looked like he was looking for his master's spirit pet. When the heaven-devouring beast saw this, a rare smile appeared on its face and also landed on the path. Woof woof. It barked and followed behind the Buddha pagoda. "Enlightened master, please." The heaven-devouring beast hesitated for a moment and asked Xiaohua to go first. "You go first." Xiaohua waved his hand. "This old man will go last to prevent any accidents from happening." "Many thanks, enlightened master." The heaven-devouring beast smiled gratefully and stepped on the path, heading towards the top of the pagoda. Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry to step on the path. Instead, he took advantage of the fact that there were no restrictions around the pagoda and quickly scanned the surroundings with his divine sense. However, to Xiaohua's surprise, although the heaven and earth yuan qi around the pagoda was very rich, the water-type heaven and earth yuan qi was still lacking. It was exactly the same as before. There was no water-type heaven and earth yuan qi wreaking havoc as he had imagined. Xiaohua's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. He thought to himself, "Damn it, did I make a mistake again?" When Xiaohua braced himself and reached the top of the pagoda, the heaven-devouring beast and the heaven-devouring beast were already waiting there. They didn't rashly enter the inverted space. Seeing Xiaohua come up, the Buddha pagoda smiled faintly and asked, "If your guess is correct, this is the top of the heaven-connecting peak." "And it should be," Xiaohua said hesitantly. "I'll know when I go take a look." At this point, even Xiaohua, who had long felt that he had a card up his sleeve, was nervous. Chapter 4250. What is this place? Is it the same space as ours? Sky Devouring asked curiously, "Why don't I go in and take a look first?" "Of course." Di Ting smiled and replied casually, "You can go first." "Okay," Sky Devouring said and plunged into the inverted space. Xiaohua, Di Ting, and Sky Devouring Beast all stood there motionlessly, quietly waiting for something. Sure enough, in just a moment Sky Devouring Beast flew out of the space barrier again in a sorry state, shouting, "Damn it, it's really weird." Haha. Di Ting couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Sky Devouring Beast lovingly and said, "Haste makes waste. You can slowly comprehend it." Hot tofu? Sky Devouring Beast's figure that was flying towards the space barrier suddenly stopped. It turned around with saliva in its mouth and said with a smile, "Great-grandfather, what kind of delicacy is this hot tofu? Damn it, you glutton." Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry and urged, "That's the food of the human race. If you want to eat it, this old man will bring you to eat it when there's a chance in the future. Hurry up and go in first." "Yes, yes." Sky Devouring Beast swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva and slowly rushed into the space barrier again. This time, Xiaohua and the others could clearly see that Sky Devouring Beast slightly adjusted its position above everyone's head and stood there steadily. Sky Devouring Beast stood firmly and said a few words to Xiaohua and the others through voice transmission. Unfortunately, Xiaohua and the others couldn't hear anything at all. Xiaohua cautiously asked Di Ting, Senior, we should go in too, right? Di Ting didn't speak but looked at Sky-Devouring Beast. Sky-Devouring Beast's face revealed a worried expression. After a moment, seeing Sky-Devouring Beast flying towards the bottom of the pagoda, Sky-Devouring Beast took a deep breath and said, "I'll go in first." After saying that, Sky-Devouring Beast urged its body to crash into the space barrier. "Senior, please." Xiao Hua suppressed his curiosity and respectfully asked Di Ting to go first. "You go in first." Di Ting seemed to have something on his mind. He looked at the pagoda below him absent-mindedly and instructed Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua nodded and was about to leave when he suddenly said, "Senior, the interior of the pagoda is the same as when we entered before, right? Is there anything unusual?" This time, the Harken learned its lesson and didn't answer immediately. Instead, it glanced at Xiao Hua and slowly replied, "It's no different from before. This is not the time for selection, so there won't be any pagoda guardian spirit beasts." "That's good," Xiao Hua said meaningfully. His figure also rushed into the inverted space. After Xiao Hua stabilized himself, he immediately scanned the surroundings with his divine sense. However, contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, not only was there no abnormality within the pagoda, there was also no abnormality within a radius of 10,000 miles. The golden sand on the ground and the distant mountains and valleys were no different from the last time Xiao Hua had come to investigate. In fact, the heaven-earth yuan qi in this space was the same as in the other space. It was also water-based, and the heaven-earth yuan qi was still lacking. It wasn't as abundant as Xiao Hua had imagined. "Motherfucker!" Xiao Hua almost cursed, because at this moment, the heaven-swallowing beast was coldly looking at him. Although it didn't say anything, the ridicule in its eyes was obvious. Devouring Heaven. Seeing that the Harken had yet to arrive, Xiao Hua instructed the Devouring Heaven Dao, "Go take a look inside the pagoda." "Okay." The Devouring Heaven Dao didn't say anything and entered from the 9th floor of the pagoda. At this time, the Harken had just passed through the space barrier. Similar to the heaven-swallowing beast, the Harken immediately frowned as soon as it entered the inverted space. Its two ears twitched slightly, but only for a moment. It looked coldly at Xiao Hua and asked, "Little thing, do you have anything to say?" Xiao Hua shrugged and looked into the distance. He shook his head and said, "This junior has nothing to say. Since there's nothing abnormal here, we might as well stay here. After all, there's no connate heavy water here. If it's possible, in a few days, this junior will send those ancient beasts that I've collected into my magical artifact here. It can be considered as giving them a new home." "No," the Harken said almost resolutely. "How can those disgusting ancient beasts stay here? If you dare to let them out, this daddy will immediately kill them all." The corner of Xiao Hua's mouth curled up, and he asked with interest, "Why not?" "There's no why. If this daddy says no, then no." The Harken replied unreasonably. Xiao Hua asked curiously, "Senior, could it be that you've discovered something?" "Nothing, it's the same as before." The Harken shook its head impatiently. "If there's nothing else, shall we leave now?" Xiao Hua looked at the heaven-swallowing beast and narrowed his eyes. He spoke again, "Senior, could it be that you think this isn't actually a great formation set up by the Dragon God, but a Buddhist formation set up by the Namo Maitreya Buddha? Or perhaps you've already noticed something else out of the ordinary? So much so that you don't even plan to explore other places and want to chase us away." "Scram!" The Harken roared and shouted, "Damn little thing, what do you know? Put away the filth in your heart. My Buddha Lord is the real Namo Maitreya Buddha. How can he destroy the world? My dragon god is also the god of the dragon race. It's even more impossible for him to destroy the world." The heaven-swallowing beast also roared and shouted, "Right now, the imperial court is filled with pagodas and the aura of Namo Maitreya Buddha. It's completely different from when this daddy was here. Do you dare say that the destruction outside is not the work of your Buddha Lord?" "Oh." Xiao Hua was slightly taken aback. He asked the heaven-swallowing beast with some surprise, "Senior, you mean that the imperial court wasn't like this before?" "That's right." The heaven-swallowing beast replied, "In the past, there were pagodas in the imperial court, but they were pagodas. There was no Buddha Lord's aura at all. Now, isn't this Buddha Lord's aura too dense? If this destruction has nothing to do with Namo Maitreya Buddha, how can this be explained? Hiss. Xiao Hua frowned. His heart jumped. He understood better than the two beasts that Namo Maitreya Buddha had already reincarnated. It was impossible for him to still be here. Then why was there still a dense aura of mercy? Then only the Buddha Lord's remains were left. But why didn't he reveal his aura before, but now he revealed it again? Xiao Hua couldn't help but think about it. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua understood a little. Pangu axe. Only when Pangu axe wasn't in the inverted space of the imperial court could it not suppress the aura of the Buddha Lord's remains and let this aura escape. Who took out this Pangu axe? Then it could only be the dragon god that he had never met before. Xiao Hua thought of this and couldn't help but look at Di Ting worriedly. Di Ting had always been hostile to him, believing that his Buddha Bodhi Dharma body had snatched Namo Maitreya Buddha's Buddha light. However, Di Ting had always believed that his Buddha Lord was still alive. The Buddha Bodhi Dharma body could only snatch a limited amount of Buddha light, and it was even more impossible for him to snatch away Namo Maitreya Buddha's Buddha fruit. Furthermore, he didn't have the Buddha Lord's Buddha edict, so it wasn't convenient for him to kill Xiao Hua. However, if Di Ting knew that Namo Maitreya Buddha had reincarnated into Jianghu, and it was impossible for Jianghu to take back the Buddha light obtained by Buddha Bodhi, how could Di Ting not make a move on him? Taoist. While speaking, the heaven-swallowing beast walked out from the bottom of the pagoda. It raised its head and transmitted, "There's nothing in the pagoda. I didn't find anything unusual." It's really strange. Xiao Hua felt an incomparable headache. He really wanted to throw away his responsibility. What did the billions of living beings in the great wilderness continent have to do with him? However, this thought only flashed through his mind. Looking at the huge pagoda, Xiao Hua understood that the answer to the riddle was in this pagoda. He had worked so hard to reach this step, there was no reason for him to give up. Alas! Xiao Hua's eyes turned and he sighed. Even if it wasn't the dragon god who was desecrated by the demon lord, then it's very likely that the Buddha Lord was desecrated by the demon lord. If this extermination of the world succeeds, the Buddha Lord, no matter how many transformations his golden body has, I'm afraid it will all collapse. The Buddhist light of billions of years will all turn into demonic light. Senior, you've followed the Buddha Lord for so many years. Don't you want to help the Buddha Lord escape from the sea of suffering? Don't you want to see the Buddha Lord? Little ant. The truth listener smiled coldly and looked at Xiao Hua with even more contempt. The Buddhist light around its body flourished, and that Buddhist light triggered the Buddhist light of the pagoda. In an instant, the truth listener became even more arrogant. This daddy has followed the Buddha Lord for who knows how many years. I also don't know how many different forms of the world I've seen. How can this daddy not know what you humans are thinking? Do you think this daddy will be stupid enough to believe you? Scram. You want to scram out of the imperial palace right now? Don't even think about touching this pagoda with a single finger. Hee hee. Xiao Hua shrugged and smiled faintly. This Xiao doesn't care. This Xiao doesn't have any injuries on his body. I don't need to see any highness, and I don't need to seek redress for injustice. Moreover, this Xiao previously thought that it was the demon lord who tarnished the dragon god's bones, but now it seems. Buzz! The truth listener's body immediately emitted an inexplicable aura. That aura was like a giant hand, enveloping nearly 10,000 miles around the pagoda. Xiao Hua felt his vision darken. Whatever Buddhist light, whatever light shadow, everything turned into a monstrous fury that pounced on him. Although this fury could strangle Xiao Hua, he didn't panic at all. He stood there as if he had a card up his sleeve. He didn't believe that the heaven-devouring beast, who knew that the dragon god might be suppressed by the Maitreya Buddha, would ignore it. Sure enough, without waiting for the truth listener's aura to fall, the heaven-devouring beast slightly raised its head. The heaven-devouring beast's aura immediately swallowed Xiao Hua's aura, leaving not even a trace behind. Heaven-devouring beast. The truth listener's expression changed. It said coldly again, "What are you doing?" "Nothing." The heaven-devouring beast said coldly, "Since we've reached this step, whether it's the dragon god, the Maitreya Buddha, or the Buddha Lord inside this pagoda, I think we should meet them." Chapter 42-52. Then the heaven-swallowing beast turned to Xiao Hua and said, Little guy, don't be afraid. I'm here. Whatever you want to do next, just do it according to your own thoughts. Senior, please wait a moment. Xianxia successfully caused the confrontation between the two beasts. After bowing to the heaven-swallowing beast, he flashed into the pagoda and carefully released his Buddhist sense to explore. Unfortunately, it was as the heaven-swallowing beast said. There was nothing in the pagoda. Xianxia flew out of the pagoda and entered another space. He also started from the beginning of the pagoda until he reached the bottom of the pagoda. Di Ting looked at Xianxia coldly and did not speak. The heaven-swallowing beast looked at Di Ting coldly, guarding against Di Ting's sudden attack. The heaven-swallowing beast was like a bullied little wife. It kept a distance from the two beasts and carefully accompanied them. Xianxia walked out of the pagoda and used his Buddhist sense to look into the distance. Then, he patted his forehead and opened his delirium eyes. A moment later, Xianxia flew back to the inverted space and also released his Buddhist sense to look into the distance. Di Ting sensed Xianxia's Buddhist sense and the Buddhist light on its body moved slightly. The heaven-swallowing beast sneered. Di Ting glanced at the heaven-swallowing beast and concealed the killing intent in its heart. It sneered and said, I want to see what you can find. Xianxia did not speak. He stood on the ground and opened his delirium eyes again. When he saw everything in front of him, he was stunned. Because the pagoda in the previous space did not have a specific outline, he could only see the occasional Buddhist light. However, the pagoda in the inverted space was indeed a real pagoda. Exquisite tower of great derivation? Damn it, how can there be two of them? Xianxia was shocked and hastily flew up again to look up. After a few more glances, Xianxia's shock gradually disappeared. This was because the appearance of this pagoda was exactly the same as the exquisite tower of great derivation. However, there were some differences in the delirium breaker eye. In the eyes of Xianxia and the others, they were unable to distinguish these differences in a hurry. This pagoda also had 9 levels. At the top of the pagoda, there was the sun and moon, overflowing with the light of the sky. At the base of the pagoda, there were mountains and rivers, revealing the great virtue of the earth. And at the eaves of the 9 levels of the pagoda, there were clouds and jade, showing infinite brilliance. No. Xianxia finished looking at the pagoda and frowned. This doesn't seem to be a pagoda. It's not my Dao Sex Dharma artifact either. Instead, it was the imperial artifact of a Confucian cultivator. How could there be a imperial equipment here? Could it be that other than the dragon god, the Maitreya Buddha, and the Buddha Lord there was someone else here? Or perhaps, this Zhao's guess is correct? Little thing. The Hakan sneered. What did you see with your third eye? Xianxia closed his delirium eyes and pointed at the pagoda. There is another pagoda inside this pagoda. Everything we saw was an illusion. How is this possible? The Hakan was shocked. It twitched its ears in disbelief, but the expression on its face did not change much. The heaven-devouring beast naturally released its primordial perception as well, and even opened its mouth to release waves towards the Buddhist pagoda. However, the two beasts, without exception, showed a puzzled expression. Obviously, they didn't find anything unusual. Seniors. Xianxia opened his mouth. There's no need to look anymore. The pagoda in that layer is fused with the pagoda in the outer layer. Only, if we break the pagoda in the outer layer, we might be able to see the pagoda in the inner layer. Who dares? The Hakan originally wanted to drive Xianxia and the heaven-devouring beast out of the skyward tower. How could it allow them to break the pagoda now? The Hakan roared, and the Buddhist light around its body soared into the sky. Its voice shook Xianxia's mind until it was buzzing with pain, like the legendary Buddhist lion roar. Of course I dare. The heaven-devouring beast was even more unaffected by the Hakan's words. Its body trembled, and the pitch-black demonic cloud appeared again, and its body expanded several times. The Hakan was not surprised by the heaven-devouring beast's attitude. He only looked at Xianxia coldly. Xianxia's body turned cold. The Hakan's fierce gaze was like a flying sword that wanted to pierce through him. Xianxia sneered. At this point, did he still have the chance to retreat? Even if the nameless pagoda was the dragon god or the Buddha Lord, for his own survival, for the billions of lives in the Chaos Continent, Xianxia would definitely give up his life. I dare too. Xianxia straightened his body and took a step forward. His voice was not loud, but the unquestionable tone was more real than gold and stone. Damn it! The Hakan cussed angrily. Its entire body suddenly expanded, and its aura completely changed. It was no different from when it was in front of the heaven-connecting peak. Buddhist lotuses appeared in the surrounding space, and each of them contained terrifying negative karma. In the center of these Buddhist lotuses, wisps of blood-red light resembled stamens, tainted with incomparable desolation amidst the benevolence. The heaven-devouring beast roared at the sky and swung its huge head in midair. Beth! Tens of thousands of black gas immediately flew out from the demonic cloud phantom that soared into the sky. When the black gas landed in the air, it immediately transformed into small heaven-devouring beasts. Each heaven-devouring beast emitted a strange fluctuation from its mouth as it pounced towards the Buddhist lotuses within the Buddhist light. The moment these fluctuations landed in the air, they immediately produced spiral-like spatial ripples that enveloped the Buddhist lotuses. The Buddhist lotuses spun as though they were about to be annihilated by the spatial ripples. However, wherever the Buddhist light around the Harkan flickered, endless heavenly flowers fell from the void. Not only did the heavenly flowers disperse the void ripples created by the heaven-devouring beast, but they also made the Buddhist lotus's rotation as stable as a boulder. Truth Listener and the heaven-devouring beast were evenly matched to begin with. Furthermore, the two beasts' injuries were the same. It was very difficult to determine the victor between them under normal circumstances. As for Xianxia, Truth Listener did not take him seriously at all. Unfortunately, Truth Listener was wrong. At that moment, there was a wild roar. Not far from the two beasts' battle, countless hurricanes were produced. Countless indescribable fluctuations were produced in the void. The Chaos Continent's alien realm also began to distort in the hurricanes. An aura that was enough to affect the battle and make Truth Listener and the heaven-devouring beast feel threatened gradually revealed itself. Truth Listener and the heaven-devouring beast were shocked. They hurriedly looked over and saw that the bone-honing Xianxia had already rushed out of the space above Xiaohua's head. The triangular bloodbone was falling on the heaven-devouring beast's head. This! Truth Listener turned pale with fright and cried out, "You! Where did you get the heaven-devouring beast's bone? Quick, quick!" The heaven-devouring beast was overjoyed. "Hurry up and give me a hand. Let's kill this damn Truth Listener first." Kill! The bloodbone landed on the celestial skeleton's head, and an ugly celestial with 3 heads and 6 arms quickly took shape. A thunderous voice came out of the celestial skeleton's mouth, and it was very straightforward. Woo! As soon as the heaven-devouring beast was born, different rays of light shot out from its 3 mouths and rushed towards Truth Listener like a waterfall. The primordial aura was even more obvious than that of Truth Listener and the heaven-devouring beast. Although the power of this ray of light was insufficient, wherever it went, fine lines would appear in the space. A slight sound of thunder was produced from these fine lines. Swish! Wherever the ray of light landed, the countless heavenly flowers that Truth Listener summoned were destroyed. The Buddha lotus that was as stable as a rock moved and fell towards the heaven-devouring beast's mouth. Moreover, the edges of the Buddha lotus were also destroyed by the ray of light. Phew! Seeing that the ray of light was weak, Truth Listener let out a long sigh and sneered, "So it's just a piece of paper. With such strength, you still dare to show off?" Hee hee. The heaven-devouring beast suddenly let out a strange laugh. When this laughter fell into Truth Listener's ears, it actually made him feel uneasy. Rumble! 2 of the heaven-devouring beast's arms waved slightly in midair, and the somewhat dim ray of light suddenly brightened. Countless thunderbolts and thunder threads bloomed from the ray of light like flowers, instantly destroying more than 40% of the Buddha lotus. Damn it! Truth Listener was alarmed. He was already seriously injured and did not dare to rely on his body to fight head-on with the heaven-devouring beast. Therefore, the 2 beasts tacitly used spells to fight. However, spells were not his forte. In particular, although the heaven-devouring beast controlled by bone-honing Xianxia looked inferior to Truth Listener, if he used his body's ability, the heaven-devouring beast was still much more powerful than Truth Listener. Therefore, the heaven-devouring beast's innate lightning power could match up to 40% of the power of Truth Listener's spells after being injured. Under the situation where Truth Listener and the heaven-devouring beast were evenly matched, not to mention 40% of the power, Even 10% of the power was enough to push the victory to Xiaohua and the heaven-devouring beast. How could this situation not shock Truth Listener? With 40% of the Buddha lotus destroyed, the remaining could no longer resist the devouring of the small heaven-devouring beasts. Just as Truth Listener was shocked, they were all sucked into the heaven-devouring beast's stomach. After obtaining the Buddha's light, the heaven-devouring beast's body swelled up again, turning into endless demonic aura once again and pouncing on Truth Listener, sealing the space within millions of miles around Truth Listener. Even the connection between the pagoda and Truth Listener was cut off. After Truth Listener lost its connection with the pagoda, the Buddha's light immediately shrank rapidly, revealing Truth Listener's scarred body. "Little thing! I'll definitely kill you!" Truth Listener yelled, his body suffused with a bloody light. Within the bloody light, fist-sized golden swan runes tumbled out like bubbles. As the golden swan runes tumbled, the sound of a wooden fish, the chanting of sutras, and the chanting of thousands of Buddhas came out from the golden swan runes. Layers of bloody Buddha's light surged out from the golden swan runes, not only piercing through the sealed demonic aura, but also turning into a bloody phantom that pounced on the heaven-devouring beast. The phantom had already been born, and the golden swan runes had completely turned into a golden liquid. Every drop of the liquid was like a minor chiliocosm, surging with the powerful power of karma. Ha ha! The heaven-devouring beast laughed. "Truth Listener, you've even used the bloody Buddha's shadow. I'm afraid you're already at the point of exhaustion, aren't you?" As it spoke, the heaven-devouring beast's figure pounced forward. The demonic clouds around its body merged with the demonic clouds that had previously sealed Truth Listener. A loud explosive sound was produced from the demonic clouds and the Buddha's shadow, and the entire space shook violently from this sound. Chapter 42-53. Woo! Just as space trembled, Truth Listener suddenly moved. Its figure stirred up a gust of wind in space as it pounced at the celestial with its single horn. Hon Xiaohua was taken aback for a moment, but he immediately understood Di Ting's plan to create a diversion. He smiled coldly, and his 3 heads spat out thunderbolts while his 6 arms reached into the void. The space around Di Ting rippled, and 6 skeletal arms were revealed. Before the skeletal arms appeared, Truth Listener suddenly opened its mouth. A fluctuation visible to the naked eye stirred up spatial folds. It was as though a fishing net had been lifted in front of Truth Listener, instantly binding the celestial's 6 arms. Furthermore, the fluctuation's momentum didn't diminish. While extinguishing the lightning, it also sealed the celestial's white bones. Bone-honing Xiaohua was shocked. Darkness appeared in front of his eyes and ears as a dizziness arose in his mind. He couldn't stand steadily. Just as the celestial's white bones staggered and tried to break free from Truth Listener's soundwave, Truth Listener raised its head fiercely and looked at Xiaohua. Its gaze suddenly landed on Xiaohua like lightning. At that moment, Xiaohua's essence had been absorbed by the celestial's white bones. He was extremely weak as he stood in midair dispiritedly, barely maintaining his balance. Truth Listener looked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua's heart immediately shrank. He had already seen through Truth Listener's sinister intentions. Truth Listener clearly wanted to fight to the death and kill him before Truth Listener was killed by the heaven-devouring beast. Xiaohua's face was pale as he urged his body to escape. However, he wasn't Truth Listener's match to begin with. Now that his essence was damaged, he was no match for Truth Listener. Just as his body flew, Truth Listener's body had already escaped from the space sealed by the demonic aura like a blood-colored qilin. Although the demonic aura tore off his flesh and blood in midair, Truth Listener had already pounced in front of Xiaohua's head in a few breaths. The murderous aura had already controlled Xiaohua's surroundings. Xiaohua found it difficult to breathe, let alone use his dermic powers. What are you trying to do?" Xiaohua desperately tried to dodge. His pale face was filled with panic. The Harkin was no more than 300 meters away from Xiaohua. Behind him, the heaven-devouring beast was blocked by the blood-colored Buddha image, and the Deva skeleton was trapped by the sound waves. Although the 2 of them were about to break through the encirclement, and although the Harkin would be killed by the 2 of them in mere moments, at this moment, Xiaohua was the absolute ruler of this area. His goal was very simple. He wanted to deal a fatal blow to this human who had given him a sense of threat since he appeared on the Eldritch continent. Furthermore, He had absolute confidence that he could kill this human. Truth Listener lashed out with its hoof, shattering space and time. Light and shadow distorted as the despicable human's horrified face magnified infinitely in front of Truth Listener's eyes. However, at this moment, a roar that made Truth Listener feel disgusted from the bottom of his heart resounded. A wave of devil chi that made Truth Listener tremble in fear was born. Xiao Hua's fearful expression suddenly turned into ridicule, and his trembling body suddenly became as steady as a mountain. Amidst this steadiness, Xiao Hua's left hand, which had been hidden in his Taoist robe, suddenly swung out. Truth Listener saw a flash of black light, and thousands of layers of devil chi sealed the surrounding space. Before he could even think of trembling, his huge body had already been split into two by the devil's saber. Not only that, as the devil's saber shrank back into Xiao Hua's Taoist robe, the thousands of layers of devil chi turned into thousands of devils, madly pouncing on Truth Listener's corpse and desperately devouring the Buddha's light. When the heaven-devouring beast destroyed the blood-colored Buddha image and looked at Xiao Hua in shock, all the Buddha's light had already disappeared. Those devils were devouring the flesh and blood under the Buddha's light. Humph! Xiao Hua coldly snorted and raised his left hand again. At this time, his left hand was slightly trembling, but devil chi gushed out from the surface of his body and quickly formed a layer of devil armor on his left arm. Immediately after, Xiao Hua's left hand grabbed, and the devil shadow pounced on Truth Listener's corpse. The thousands of devils that were preparing to devour the flesh and blood were frightened and scattered in all directions. The devil shadow fell into Truth Listener's corpse and passed through it. When the devil shadow flew out with a bloody light, Truth Listener's corpse turned into flying ash and scattered in the air. Come here. Xiao Hua's mouth was filled with killing intent. The blood-colored devil shadow obediently fell into Xiao Hua's left hand. The entire devil shadow spun rapidly in Xiao Hua's left hand, and finally condensed into a red-black rhombus. Come out! Xiao Hua ordered again, and the devil shadow obediently flew out of the red-black rhombus. The rhombus instantly turned into a sparkling and translucent blood-colored rhombus, emitting a misty luster. The luster rushed out of the rhombus and turned into Truth Listener's appearance. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at the blood-colored rhombus. His mind swept it into the space, and then his left hand moved. Whether it was the devil shadow, devil head, or devil chi, they all shrank back into his body. You are the devil. The heaven-swallowing beast's tone was filled with surprise, but its expression did not change much. Xiao Hua respectfully said, "This junior has a devil clone, I presume senior already knew." If this junior did not know the devil clan's cultivation method, how could I know that the dragon bones of Supreme Dragon God were defiled by Supreme Dragon God? At this time, bone-tempering Xiao Hua also urged the Celestial to fly back. In order to not cause the heaven-swallowing beast to misunderstand, Xiao Hua kept bone-tempering Xiao Hua and the Celestial. The heaven-swallowing beast looked thoughtfully at Xiao Hua keeping the Celestial, and said indifferently, "At this time, you don't have to hide anything from me. You want to kill the Maitreya Buddha in this pagoda, right? Moreover, there is no dragon god here." Senior is wrong. Xiao Hua said with a smile. This junior can clearly tell senior that there is no Maitreya Buddha in this pagoda. If there is, it is only the remains of Maitreya Buddha. In other words, there must be a dragon god in this pagoda, and it is Supreme Dragon God who is using the remains of Maitreya Buddha to confuse Di Ting. How is that possible? How do you know? The heaven-swallowing beast seemed to be in disbelief. I and Di Ting have spent who knows how much effort and time to find out the truth. How do you know so well? It's very simple. Xiao Hua explained, Namo Maitreya Buddha has already reincarnated, and his reincarnation is this junior's nephew. Ah? The heaven-swallowing beast was stunned on the spot, and said hesitantly, How can it be so coincidental? Yes, it is so coincidental. I don't know if senior knows that there is an ancient saying in our human race, called there is no story without coincidences. Many things seem to have been arranged, and it is unimaginable. Xiao Hua nodded and said, when Junior saw the Buddha statue of Namo Maitreya Buddha, I already knew about this coincidence. So, when Junior didn't know about the relationship between Di Ting and Namo Maitreya Buddha, Junior didn't think much of it. But when Junior knew about this relationship, Junior already understood that Di Ting will definitely not let Junior off, and he will definitely force Junior into a dead end. Human race, a human race. The heaven-swallowing beast looked at Xianxia, truly speechless. The human race has always claimed to be the leader of all living things, and I have always scoffed at it. But looking at it today, this sentence is not without reason. Actually, Xianxia said again, if Di Ting didn't have killing intent towards Junior, Junior would definitely not make a move. I believe Senior can also see this. Hee hee. The heaven-swallowing beast sneered. How can he not have killing intent? He is the same as me, and won't live for long. How can he let go of a human who snatched the Buddha light from his Buddha Lord? He has carried his Buddha Lord for millions of years. I believe this is also the reason why Senior is not worried about Junior. Xianxia said with a smile. Alas, if I didn't fight with Di Ting, it would have been fine. This fight has already worsened my injuries, and I am like a dried-up oil lamp. You don't even need to make a move, and I will die. At this point, why should I be afraid of you? The heaven-swallowing beast sighed lightly, and didn't hide anything, answering honestly. At this point, the heaven-swallowing beast's eyes suddenly turned and asked, That's right, that Pangu axe. You really didn't take it? Xianxia looked at the pagoda, then looked at the heaven-swallowing beast, and said with a smile. Senior doesn't need to be depressed, Venerable Dragon God is in this pagoda. As long as Senior finds Venerable Dragon God, won't these injuries be trivial? I hope so. Seeing that Xianxia didn't answer his question, the heaven-swallowing beast somewhat understood, but then Xianxia replied seriously, That's right, Senior, that Pangu axe, Junior really didn't take it. Hearing this, the heaven-swallowing beast's heart that had just understood instantly became confused again. He didn't understand what Xianxia meant by himself. Senior, please wait a moment. Xianxia ignored the heaven-swallowing beast's confusion and flew up. Although it was very slow, it was still much better than before when he used the Deva Whitebone. And the heaven-swallowing beast casually responded, and watched Xianxia fly towards the pagoda. Heaven-swallowing beast, come here. Xianxia flew towards the pagoda, looked up at the heaven-swallowing beast in the distance, and said, Enlightened Master. The heaven-swallowing beast stuttered. It seemed that this child was frightened. Try using the nine-toothed rake. See if you can topple this pagoda. Xianxia instructed. Hearing that Xianxia wanted it to work, the heaven-swallowing beast finally breathed a sigh of relief, and activated its avatar, waving the nine-toothed rake and hitting the pagoda. Buzz! The pagoda burst with a burst of Buddhist light, not only blocking the nine-toothed rake, but also sending the avatar flying. The heaven-swallowing beast was a little scared, but it didn't dare to be negligent. It took a deep breath, and the aura around its body surged. The nine-toothed rake flashed with hundreds of afterimages, and attacked the pagoda. Unfortunately, the result didn't change, except that the heaven-swallowing beast was pushed back dozens of miles. No need. Xianxia waved his hand, stopping the heaven-swallowing beast from attacking again. The heaven-swallowing beast at the side suggested, This pagoda is very powerful, in my opinion. I'm afraid we'll have to use Pangu axe. You'd better go out and find Pangu axe first. Of course, Xianxia wouldn't reveal the whereabouts of Pangu axe. He smiled bitterly and said, With Junior's strength, I don't know how long it will take to reach Tongtian Peak. If I look for Pangu axe and come back, this innate heavy water will probably flood the primitive continent several times. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.